All right, good evening, welcome. We're here for the fourth budget work session, and I know since the last presentations, there's been some input from trustees, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Wu.
Good evening, everyone. So tonight is the fourth budget budget meeting, budget work session. The purpose of tonight really is to have a discussion regarding proposed changes to the tentative budget. So I will really kick it back to the trustees to, have their questions. I believe most of the department heads are here. Ralph and myself are here to answer any questions. So I'll just
Do you want to just go over your analysis of parking fees, and we'll take care of what you have on your agenda, and then we can turn it over to trustees who have questions.
Sure, that would be great. Hold on, let me just. Oh, here. So earlier, in my budget presentations, I mentioned, that there in the proposed tentative budget, there are increases to the various parking fees the village issues permits for. The proposed changes are for the resident railroad parking fees to increase the fee from $150 a year to $200 a year. Off-peak railroad, we are proposing keeping it the same to $50 per year. The non-resident railroad parking fee, which is the limited parking spaces we currently have at Stewart Manor and Nassau Boulevard. The current fee is $500. We're proposing increasing that to $600. Likewise, we have various parking fields that we allow certain parking spaces for. This is at Field 5, Field 6, and also in Faircourt. These are currently $200 a year. We're proposing raising those to $300 a year. And then for 7N, we're proposing bringing back the fee for the parking, and these are mostly for 67 Hilton and one other building. So we're proposing bringing back that fee to $200 a year. The increase in all these fees is about $80,000 in additional revenues to the village for the next fiscal year.
Thank you.
What is that based on? Meaning, are you extrapolating from the number of stickers that parking permits that were issued?
That's correct. So we're forecasting how many tickets we will be issuing next year. And it's in line with what we've issued this year. So that would be the increase.
Because I recall during COVID, the parking lots, we could have put fixed wing aircraft in. But
Yeah, so in the analysis I handed out, if you look at the pre-COVID days, right, the year 1920, the fiscal year 1920, for the resident parking, there were 1,144 tickets issued. For this year, we have 768 forecasted. So it is a big decrease since COVID. A lot more people working from home, not commuting into the city or having local jobs. So we are not at the same levels pre-COVID in terms of issuing parking tickets. So there is additional availability.
So Irene and I were talking about this afternoon, and I think that, being that I always used to be at these parking lots and seeing how it's changed COVID versus post-COVID, and knowing that we probably have the availability or the ability to bring more money in by, I think, doubling the amount of spaces that we lease out or we sell out to non-residents. I don't think that you do it at Country Life Press. Maybe you do a smaller amount at Gardens. You do an amount at Garden City, increase it a little bit. But really where I think there's more of a likelihood for, the people in Garden City South and in Stewart Manor is that the Nassau Boulevard train station and the Stewart Manor train station. For instance, last year when we were campaigning for Jessica, And we spent one morning at the Stewart Manor train station. Everyone we spoke to was not a Garden State resident, right? Just about. And so it was eye-opening. And my thought is the parking lot is still very empty. There are a lot of non-residents there. It's on our property. And I also feel that an increase of only $100 is a gift, that I think that we could raise the rent, the amount to 700 or 750, and I still think it would be in huge demand. And I think it's a way for us to bring in revenue. I think it's the $200 price ticket for residents itself, whether you use it for working or just for pleasure, is also a gift. So my proposal would be to increase the amount that we do to non-residents by twice, and I think we would up that. My thought is to up it to 700 or 750.
So a couple of questions. Faircourt, what is that? Which parking lot is that?
So Faircourt, I believe Faircourt is. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yep, okay. Are there any other apartment buildings in town where residents use village parking overnight?
Yes, at 7N. Commissioner, you want to come up here? I think you're very knowledgeable on the parking because he's very involved as well.
I think it's Hampshire House.
On Washington Avenue, correct? It's.
Do you want to know what
Seven.
fields people use? Yeah, well.
And do they get charged?
7N.
Oh, we just charge 7N for, apartment dwellers.
And
7N was 67 Hill and
Yep.
111 7th Street.
And then which other buildings are able to use village parking overnight?
Without a restriction,
Yes,
okay, you can have Parkfield 6E, some areas of 6E, you also have Parkfield 7E. And at night, you could actually use Parkfield 6 or 7S at night. There is no restrictions at night after 6 o'clock. But, and you also have Parkfield 9E.
okay,
9E, that takes care of the Stewart Avenue field.
okay. So we're, some yes, some no, I guess is what we
Yes,
come down to.
but some of those fields get busy during the day with businesses.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, that's one of the reasons why those fields were in touch, I believe, the last time.
All right. And Irene, the second page that you shared with us is a comparative pricing list for railroad fees, I guess for parking in the area. Is that right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
That's okay.
Yeah.
The second page you gave us is railroad
Yes.
parking fees in the area. So,
Yes.
so our 150 or 200, whatever it is, would be on the higher end of that scale.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And my final question.
Good.
So we're raising the rates for residents who probably are only going in 3 days a week instead of 5. There's no capital project, there's no improvements to the lots. This is purely a rate increase.
There's no current
Planned.
plans for,
Yeah.
but there have been improvements to the lot since the last time there was a raise.
Okay,
If
that's
you
good
look
to
at
know.
the last time, the last increase was in the 2008, 2009 fiscal year, so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Faircourt, the one off of Washington, did you say? That's where the office, two-story, that's where I worked for a number
Yes.
of years. Because at night, you see a lot of cars all the way in the back.
Yeah, that lot only has a few, permit spots left.
mhm.
It's a fairly open lot now. But, it's the people who wish to park near the building do have the option of getting permits. Most of those cars in the back are probably district attorney investigator type vehicles. But there is no restriction in those back area at this time.
Got it, yeah, that's what I had heard it was. Thank you.
Cars don't have hubcaps. We know where they are.
My view on trustee Harrington's suggestion is to stick with what the treasurer has suggested. I don't want to necessarily punish people. I would consider going up 25 or 50 more, but I don't think that we want to go from 500 to 700. I don't also know that this really moves the needle much. These funds, I would imagine, go into the general fund or cash or whatever and are dispersed or used not on specific programs, but to help on various projects. Would that be fair?
Well,
Ms.
it
Wu?
helps with the administration of these permits, right? Issuing them, purchasing materials, the timing of, the employees, dealing
So-
with the, issuing these permits and.
That's a fair point. So if you subtracted that out, just roughly, ballpark, what would you think out of the 100% you need for administrative costs and personnel? Is it a quarter? Is it 30%? Is it more?
Of what the
Of-
revenues, what these
correct,
revenues? would be?
Correct.
I mean, I think it would cover the administrative costs for sure. It would cover it. Yes.
But it does not provide us with a great deal of excess cash. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be my view. I don't know what everybody else's view is, but I like what you have proposed, and I would move forward on that.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, there's no.
No,
vote
No, I
needed.
know we're
understand.
not. I'm just,
Understand.
I'm well aware, it's just.
And that's great. All right, so is that it for this? Is there anything else? Robert, just hang on one sec. Well, you know what? If you have a quick comment?
Yes, about this issue. First, it's been 16 years since 2008, and I don't have the exact
Inflation.
percentage of inflation, but it's over 30% cumulatively.
Okay.
So, and then second, I don't know what the costs are for these lots, given the way that the village does its expenses, but there are expenses for sweeping. I've seen the sweepers in these lots. There's snow plowing. There's painting of the lines, which I've seen them do in the Garden City. I think they did that last year. So there's recurring maintenance and other operating costs, which have gone up considerably over that time. And secondly, for Nassau Boulevard and Stewart Manor, thank you. It would be useful to know like how many vacant spots are there on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, to get some idea of how many spots can be let out for non-residents of Garden City. So because the railroad is not used as intensively as it was before COVID. So I would just like it's important to think about things holistically in terms of all the costs for the lots. There's also lighting, and the electric rates have gone up considerably since then. So I don't have a complete budget for what it would cost for doing the lots, but it's gone up quite a bit. So anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I use the Nassau Boulevard station. I use Maryland Station as well. I think there are 4 village stations, right? Railroad station, 5. So it's Stewart Manor, Nassau Boulevard, Garden City, Country Life Price, and then Maryland Avenue. Yeah, so that's where the parking lots are. I think by Nassau Boulevard, usually it's not very full. Usually what time, it doesn't matter what time you get there, there are available spots. It's pretty available, accessible at that station. So many people in town actually, I think, use the Maryland station. And if you get there after 6:40, usually there aren't any spots. So it's used up pretty quickly. But the other station, I would say there are available spots. Personally, I'm okay with these increases. I think they are fair. And then with the inflation, and for the residents one, it was last time was 08, 09, and it's been many years. But I don't see a big, usage of these lots just because the Maryland station, I think, is a very busy one, and then that lot fills up fairly quickly, and the other ones are fairly empty. That's my personal evaluation.
So is there appetite on the board to increase non-resident parking for these other stations?
I wouldn't have. I'm sorry, Mr. Torino, did you say not by me?
Correct. I mean, I would go with the numbers you have here. Candidly, this is just a money grab, so let's call it what it is. To issue the 775 permits, the admin cost is probably about, labor hours is what I could calculate it out to be at 10 minutes a ticket. So it's about $2,000. We're gonna pay for the lights no matter what. We're gonna snowplow no matter what. So the fact of the matter is, we have an asset. We want other people to use it. I think the numbers that you have here are fine. That's what I would go with. I wouldn't increase the non-resident or anybody else more so than we have to.
I'm okay with
I
the
didn't mean
proposed
the,
amount.
I don't know if I misspoke, but I meant, is there an appetite to increase the number of spaces allocated for non-residents? Since the comment is that some of the parking spaces are not as full. So currently, I believe we allocate about 70 spaces between Nassau Boulevard and Stewart Manor to non-residents. So is there an appetite to increase that number to 100 spaces or more? I don't know.
I would just say, I don't know if the other trustees got it, but I haven't seen an analysis really to make that decision.
Mhm.
I think what would need to know is how many spots are open throughout the year, the busiest weeks, because we don't want residents to go and not be able to park at their train station. That's the only reason not to. So I think you just
Basically,
need to
yeah.
work the numbers.
The Nassau Boulevard station is probably 20% full every day. That's it. And the Stewart Manor station, I don't know as frequently, but the Nassau Boulevard train station, whereas it used to probably be about 70% full before COVID, it's now like 20% full. I mean, we can have Commissioner
I mean,
Jackson.
anecdotally, I noticed too, because I go by New Hyde Park Road, so I think it is likely that it will have no impact on residents. I just think we need to just give a little information more to the
agree.
board before they make that decision to make sure it doesn't, backfire.
Mayor, in the past, if the board asks or requests, we actually do a study and we give it to Irene and then she presents it to you. And we do that. We'll go on different days of the week and we'll do a study. Because some days are more used than others, especially Fridays are a very light day. But we will look at it and if you wish, and then we can go back and report to the board if they want to extend the amount of spaces.
Right, like also the percentage
sense.
of the spots available for non-residents, what percentage gets used, right?
Yeah, I believe you're sold out, right?
Yeah, we're sold out. All
Oh,
the spots
okay.
that we sell out every year for
Okay.
the non-resident spots and there's a waiting list. And
So do we, maybe it's also good to know the waiting list,
It's
how-
usually a lottery.
Is
It's
to
a
bump up
lottery.
that number. Do you
Yeah.
want to bump
Yeah.
up that number and allow more permits to non-residents? And I think with a little study,
Yeah, and I
be
think
ready
you
to
can,
make that.
I think the
That would
permits
help.
go out dedicated to Stewart Manor, then the permits go out dedicated to so many to Nassau Boulevard. You do less to Garden City, you do none, I don't think, to Country Life Press, and Maryland Avenue, you do none.
Yeah, we are seeing a slight increase, so I'll be a little cautious with Garden City Railroad. Maryland Avenue is more than ever. We added spots and I believe it's because of the Grand Central train.
Yeah.
So that is packed. But we can I would predict that the main two lots would be the two we've been talking about, Stewart Manor and Nassau Boulevard. But we will look at all of them, but Country Life Press and Maryland are usually full or 90%. Maryland's always 100%.
We can always make that decision later on.
And that's what we've done in the past, sir.
Excellent. Now, I assume, Ms. Wu, the ball is in our court?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe just to add a little smoothness and process to this. Judy, Trustee Courtney came up with an idea of breaking out the departments. And I know that the fire department has an obligation at 8 o'clock. And why don't we start with that, Judy?
Want me to go?
Sure.
I had just a couple of questions on the fire department, mainly related to capital questions. My first question is, and this number is wrong. Page 30 of the executive summary states that the capital project budget was 792. From last year's capital budget projects, there were 646,000 remaining, used to bring the headquarters bathroom to code. So my question there was, which bathrooms are they? Because aren't they new bathrooms and what is the code issue?
Okay, so that is referring to the bathrooms on the first floor of
Oh,
the
on the first floor.
firehouse.
Okay,
So we have two sets of bathrooms. The bathrooms on the second floor were redone in 2018. The bathrooms on the first floor were not during that construction period. Currently down there is a illegally built shower that was built by former employees
okay.
that is not up to code. We're asking to, well, we need to have a new bathroom installed. This is mainly for safety and as well as basically cancer prevention. In the event we come back from a call, some sort of fire, any sort of contaminant, some sort of chemical, members can egress from the apparatus floor into the shower, decontaminate, and then go into the firehouse. Currently, they cannot do that, bring in any sort of contaminants directly into the
Okay.
firehouse. So that's,
So it's the first floor though.
it's the
Not
first floor
upstairs.
bathroom. Yes. The short term, yes, first
Thank you.
floor.
And then similar topic, the capital project plan from March, so not the budget, but the plan and the progress against that plan states that there's 244,000 of unused business district paving funds that would be used to fund the fire department headquarter bathrooms. So is that the same project?
That would be a question for Irene and Giuseppe.
So
They
that was
were-
confusing to me.
Yes, I believe Mr. Giovanello mentioned the cost for the renovation of the bathroom was going to need additional funding. That's not currently in the plan because the funding, the entire funding that's in the fire station renovations project is not just for headquarters, it's also for Edgemere. What remains on the design and specs budget for that. So
Right,
that's
so-
only a portion of that existing funds that will go
Understood.
towards the bathroom.
So I'll say for me, it's getting a little murky because I'm not really clear which is going to which. And from a, which is, how much are those new bathrooms on the first floor costing us? How much of that money is coming from a capital project that we already approved for something else that is now being pushed against that bathroom project? So I'm a little confused.
So the amount that's sitting in the fire station renovations project,
Yep.
it's for two things. It was previously budgeted for, a portion was that for Edgemere and a portion was that for other renovations that are needed in the other fire stations, the one on Clinton and the one on headquarters. So a
We know,
portion
but
of
we
that.
don't know how much of what goes where.
No, like 240,000 of that is for the other stations, not Edgemere. So the discussion, they're trying to price out what the bathrooms are going to cost. So a portion of what's remaining in the business district paving project will potentially go towards the fire station renovations once they come up with a pricing for that.
And in addition to that, a portion of the remaining 646 is going to be used against those bathrooms as well.
The 646 is what's existing today in that project.
Correct.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So a portion of that was already budgeted for upgrades to the other fire stations, and a portion of that is the Edgemere Firehouse. So that was previously budgeted for upgrades.
Right. Does anyone
And
else understand?
just a quick,
this, or is it me?
just a quick follow-up. Ms. Wu, is the expenditure at Edgemere related to the design of the renovation, so to speak, or is it earmarked for something specific that exists in the station today, like a bathroom, like a rec room, like whatever?
No, the budget that remains for Edgemere was what was set aside for Phase 1A, which was discussed as the abatement, the original work that was done there, plus the design and the specs for the new construction, right? So that's the portion that remains there, is still some additional funding towards that.
Okay.
That's what remains.
Okay. And I guess for Mr. Giovanello, do we still owe money to the architects? I know that we are either potentially in possession of or will be soon of this new, slimmed down version of the architectural plans. Is that fair? Got it. So money's due and owing to the architectural firm. Thank you.
So at some point, we will have an estimate for how much those first floor bathrooms cost? We don't have that? Yes?
Those drawings, those specs and drawings were just completed, as of Monday. So I'm still processing that. We're gonna about 50 those drawings within, a week or so. So we have the drawings and specifications are complete.
And I'm gonna ask one more question and then I will stop because I don't want to be dragging this out. Do we have an estimated, I know we haven't gotten them back yet, but based on what is already in either last year's or proposed this year's capital budget, do we have an estimate of what we think those bathrooms will cost? Or it's all in one big number? Yep. Okay, all right, thank you.
But that money is there, is there. Okay. Do we have any other questions for the fire department? We good? So thank you, gentlemen, very much, and you can feel free to depart at any time that's convenient for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Irene.
Why don't we go on to rec? You want to do rec?
Good evening.
Evening. Are you leading Judy or Ed?
Want me to go first? Ann?
You,
Okay,
sure.
Sure. So a couple of just clarification questions and then some other detail. So, in capital, so you're requesting 546,000 for, the park rec equipment line? And this is just to educate me, right? So last year, or it appears to be that in the project report, there's 36,000 remaining from last year's. Does that get credited towards the 546? How does that get used?
Yeah, so there's 36,000 in parks recreational equipment. That is a carryover from previous years.
Yes.
That wasn't, I had no knowledge of that account until I started going through this. So that is going to be used this year, that 36,000, because that account was created to buy things like park benches, tables, picnic tables, the chess tables, the cornhole, stuff that BCI and through our own internal reviews, we figured that we need to add to the parks. We aren't adding any more funding to that line. The other equipment line is our vehicles, our equipment.
So Parks Rec equipment, the 546 is vehicles.
Correct.
It's not benches and
No.
equipment, playground and stuff.
That's vehicles, mowers, stump grinders.
Okay. And then under recreation equipment, that is also equipment, trucks and stuff too. It's just not used in the parks.
No, so there's only one line in the projected capital projects. There's recreation equipment with the request of 546,000, and then in the ongoing or the existing capitals, there's parks recreational equipment, which is that 36,000.
I'll double check on that. So this year you're requesting 680,000. I'll look at my notes. This year I wrote, this year you're requesting $680,000 in recreation equipment? No?
No, 546.
546.
Okay. And last year in the project plan, you requested $684,000, most of which has been used, right? So that's fine,
Correct,
correct?
I believe. It's definitely most of which has been used. Yeah,
It's on here.
yeah,
So
680,000. Yeah.
So in the update that hopefully we will start to get every month on capital projects, it breaks it down into two types of equipment, right? Recreation equipment. And that's the 684 from last year. Is that,
Right. So yeah, last year we spent 680 on the recreation equipment, which is mowers, trucks, leaf vacs, all this.
okay.
And we're requesting what this year? I'm trying to find it. I'm sorry.
546.
546. Okay.
So, so if I look at proposed capital projects for recreation, under full year 2026, there is a line item that says recreation recreation equipment 546.
Correct.
Okay. And then in the project plan, there is a number that says recreation equipment 684. So most of which you spent, right? Which is fine. I'm looking at it. Line 36 in the March update.
Are you looking at the existing capital projects report?
Yep,
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's on the previous slide.
understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is in addition to that, right? So I guess my question is, should we anticipate, so now I'm getting to my question. Should we anticipate every year, we're gonna have about $500,000 or so, 300 to $500,000 in equipment funding needed for recreation?
No. So in the 5-year capital plan, it shows that it's 546 for this year, it's 470 for next year. It goes down to 177, 121, 143. Now, those numbers are going to change within the 5 years. Our equipment breaks, it gets old. We've mentioned before that we're using a lot of dated equipment and a lot of stuff does need updated. And obviously, as the market progresses and better equipment and better technology comes out, then we're going to want to try and stay ahead of that. But in our 5-year plan, we see it dropping significantly as we get to a point where we're starting to get the equipment that we require.
Right, okay, because it does feel like there's a couple of big hit years, so you're anticipating that those numbers should go down as we've kind of
Yes.
upgraded the fleet. Okay. We'll record that. And my final question is on St. Paul's and Clute Hall in the Field House. And again, feel free to correct me. So what I believe I understood was on the 24-25 capital budget, there was about $370,000 spent to upgrade Clute and the Field House. There was the rec facility, and what is that? It's just called rec facility. And there was $281,000 there.
That's St. Paul's.
That's St. Paul's,
Yes.
but what? Like, is that the lawn? Is that the grass? Is that the
Oh,
field?
no. So that's the BCI costs and the roof, the patching of the roof.
Oh, that's a consulting cost in there?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Because there is I know, but there is a consulting line, right? Usually. Okay.
So that's in the two, I'm sorry.
That's in the capital budget, a consulting cost?
Yeah, so all the costs related to St. Paul's go there.
That's in the 281?
Correct.
Okay. And then there's lighting for 45 and exterior renovation for 45, so 371. And now for this year's capital budget, we're asking for about $700,000 in addition, right? So 333 for HVAC, 275 for windows, and 125 for floors in Clute and/or the Field House. So I'm correct in saying, and this is more informational, I think, correct in saying we're at about, assuming this goes through, $1 million in capital budget between last year and projected for this year for that facility.
With the exception of the 281 being for the main St. Paul's building and not renovations to existing facilities that are being used. So
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
I misunderstood that. Okay, so you backed that out. So we're at like, say, 750 instead of $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so a considerable amount of money being spent on those facilities.
correct, but a considerable amount of money, which is an investment into being allowing us to increase programming and generate revenue. So our hope is that we can
Yeah,
offset those costs.
criticism, just
No,
so I
I know. I'm
understand.
just saying.
And then my last question on that one is, then do you anticipate, like, are those are they up to speed once we get through next year? Are there any other major repairs that you anticipate?
Yeah, there are still major repairs needed to do that to be done to there, but it kind of goes in hand with when we get the final BCI master plan and then how the village progresses with what is going to be done, not just with the main building, but also any additions to the existing buildings. They need new bathrooms. We need new officers over there, but that's going to be bigger picture.
That's not
things, really.
included in this, obviously.
No.
So, okay. I have two more, I have pool questions, so I'll stop.
Yeah, these projects that we're doing in these two buildings, Clute Hall and the Field House, they're an absolute necessity Because when you look at the survey that's going out, options A and option B, particularly option B, a lot of what's in the field house would hopefully go in there in terms of.
Yeah, so currently the lighting in St. Paul's, which is going to be done before the end of this year, that's a necessity. It's really poor lighting. It's faded and the luminaires that we have there are past their lifespan. We need to upgrade the lighting there. We have a really popular pickleball program in there, basketball, and right now it's not really, it's bordering on a safety issue if we don't improve that lighting. Similar for Clewett Hall, our dance program is probably our most successful in the village out of our recreation programs. And that the floor that the dance program is being held on is desperately in need of repair. There's often parts of the floor lifting, it gets nailed back down, it becomes a trip hazard. Again, to keep them functional, and they're two very important first parts of the facility for us in terms of what programming we're trying to increase and continue. Without these improvements, we will start to trend downwards. With these improvements, we'll be able to use the facilities year round. We'll be able to increase our programming. I believe we will bring more people back because they'll appreciate the improvements that we're doing, and we'll generate a lot more revenue through that. If we leave them to continue to go into disrepair like they have been, people are going to start walking away from them and saying we no longer want to use that facility, and we're going to be fighting an uphill battle from there. So these are absolutely necessary.
And the excuse me, sorry, and the HVAC, which is the biggest number here.
Yeah, so the HVAC is I was hoping I would have a more accurate number for you. I've been going out to different companies and I'm still waiting for Energy Mechanical to get back to me with regards to that. But that's what's going to allow us to use it year round. Currently, we have a couple of people who are renting through the summer who turn around and say, we don't care what it's like in there. We don't care how hot it is in there. But typically, the heating, particularly in the summer months, the heat in there, without any air conditioning makes it not bearable to go and play or to run dance programs in those two buildings. Like, again, if we fix that over the summer, we're going to be able to keep those buildings as busy as they are now and as they are in the fall, which is at capacity.
And the windows.
Yeah, the windows the same. They've kind of just been replaced as needed. So they're a mix mash. They're not helping towards the issues with the heat. And if we pay for HVAC and we don't fix the window problem, we're essentially going to be pouring AC out the windows. So we need to address that as well.
Where are the windows actually located? On the top where the racetrack is?
So the windows in Clewett Hall are around where the track is as well. And the windows in the field house are again around the top of the
So
courts.
let me just do a little analysis with you. The air conditioning is going to be coming in from the top. Where do you plan on having the vents?
So again, I'm waiting for the design, but there is talk of either having it towards the top or having multiple units down on where the dance floor is and the stage area is.
So the only thing that you're actually doing with air conditioning is air conditioning the first 6 feet off the ground because the cold air goes down. You're not going to get the cold air to the second floor. So just consider that as one thought process. As far as air conditioning, that would probably help the floor because it will be the expansion and contraction of the floor that is one of the evils that degrade floors.
So
Thank
with
you. Thank you. Do you have anything you'd like to
Yeah,
add?
just
Thank you.
sorry for running late, guys. A little something going on there. Sorry about that. So Andy, just quick catch up. We're talking about Clewett Hall, or we're talking about Field House, or we're talking about both?
Talking about both.
Talking about both, yeah. So I was in there the other day at up on the walkway in Clewett. So Clewett's windows, believe it or not, and this is just my personal view, been in this world, are not terrible. You know what I mean? If we didn't honestly, we could push that onto the back burner, in my view, as opposed to the field house. The field house, the quality of the windows in the field house are probably like a 1.5. They're horrible. It's a miracle they've lasted this long. Those have to be changed. They're disasters. No point putting in air conditioning, heat in the field house. It will all go out those windows. In Clwyd, they're a completely different type of window. They're a vinyl replacement window. They haven't been opened and closed a lot because just nobody really goes up there and opens and closes them a lot. And they're actually double paned and stuff like that. So they're actually not terrible. They're not great, but they're not terrible. But yes, when it comes to both those buildings, conditioning them so we can use them year round and get the revenue from that, to me is essential that we get that done. Flooring in the stage and in Clwyd, you can get amazing amount of use out of that, and that certainly would be my view. Now, I know I've asked before, try and get a meeting with this HVAC company, and I know they're obviously tough to nail down, but sooner than later, we got to have a meeting with them, and I want to hear what, because there's multiple different ways to condition those spaces with completely different systems. And again, no point being penny wise and pound foolish either, because they are going to be running constantly, and those are big spaces. So energy efficiency is critical when it comes to these. So again, as soon as you can get that meeting together, you just give me a buzz, and we'll meet over there and do a full walkthrough of both buildings.
Yep. So my last conversation with them was that, asking for the quote that he was trying to put together, and also seeing if he could come down and do a walkthrough with yourself and me. The windows, the initial approach to that was we identified St. Paul's Fieldhouse as the most imperative to change those windows. But then we said, if we're going to do those windows, let's do Clwyd as well. I think, unfortunately, Clwyd's windows haven't been opened and closed that much, because when you open them, you can't close them. So we just leave them closed. So.
That would be correct. They're casement windows, and casement windows, again, if they're not lubricated on a regular basis, they'll just seize up, and that's kind of what's happening. You can't pull them back in. So, but as soon as you can get that meeting together, that would be good. So
absolutely,
we'll stay on them. Thanks, appreciate it.
So I'm looking at the capital projects here. For this year, it's 3.1 million in the total recreation department. And next year is 1.6. The year after, 452,000, and the year after 400,000-ish, and then 100,000. So it appears to me this year it's a big number in the 5-year plan, and then it just goes down in the coming years, right? In 2 years, it goes way down. So I'm assuming the reason that this is a big year is because many projects were delayed or pushed off, and now they're in desperate need to be addressed. It's still a big number. Just as what Trustee Modun mentioned before, if there is anything that we can slice out or defer to maybe another year or another 2 years, that's going to help with flattening out this year a little bit, because this is a very big number in 1 year, in terms of equipment, in terms of renovations, in terms of, all the things that we need to do. One question is the HVAC improvements. It would be really nice to have it year round. And we're talking about revenues here. My question is, and then you mentioned, we're trying to get revenue up and the usage up similar to the fall. But I'm just thinking the summer, people are going on vacation, people go in, out east, or they go to camps. Many parents work, their kids are not really here. And we have the school program right across the street in the middle school. And the rec has a lot of programs. A lot of programs are actually at the community park with USA Sports. And we have the swimming pool. So I just don't see a big need in town in the summer in the facility compared to the fall or the spring when school is in full swing and everyone is here and it's getting used a lot. Are we planning on renting this out? Do we have like analysis on how much money are we looking to getting from renting things out, or what's the revenue that we are projecting on receiving?
Yeah, so I sound like a broken record, but our revenue analysis has been difficult with the data recreation software that we've been using. So as we move forward to our new one, this is going to be a lot easier to do. And this is something that's imperative, which is why we did it, so that we can follow trends and also give full revenue analysis and see what analysis and see what's working. It's actually the opposite of what you say, because in the spring and the fall, the Fieldhouse and Cluett Hall are at capacity for in-house programs, right? So GCA basketball, GCA soccer, if the indoor soccer for the men's league, things that we charge a nominal fee for. In the summer, we get those rental requests where we always offer our facilities to our residents first, but if they're not being used, it's a revenue opportunity, and we can generate in a week what we might generate in a whole season by renting out all 4 courts. We have a basketball camp booked in there for this summer over 2 weeks, which is going to generate upwards of $20,000, which is 100 Centennials players or whatever. So if we can be operational in the summer in there, we can make more money faster there because we can rent the facilities out.
Jess, and you're another thing that ties into this, the systems that they will put in will do both. They'll do heat and cooling. So it's not like you're paying a lot of extra for air conditioning versus heat. These systems, a lot of them now switch to heat pump systems. So they'll do both. They'll do heating and cooling. So it's kind of, you're getting a 2-for-1 system here. It's not like you have to put in a separate air conditioning system, then they got to put in a separate heating system. Whatever systems they're going to put in here, we're going to do both. And they're high efficiency systems, and that's very important. So, you know, again, you're just trying to condition the space. So people are either not freezing to death in there, or they're not, it's so hot that it's miserable in there. So it's made.
Just also, this is a very obvious comment, but almost 40% of the expenditures there is for the synthetic turf field. So, you know, something that we have been eyeing, I think, as a community for quite some time. So I think it's time to bite the bullet there. But you raise good questions, and if we can increase revenues, they're not going to balance out much the expenditures this year. But hopefully they will long term.
And also, it's worth noting that at the time when I put this budget together, we had no draft master plan from BCI. So the coming years where it drops considerably, I took that into account, that we were going to get recommendations from them. They came up with a 10-year master plan for the recreation department, right? That's what we asked them to do. But we knew what was the most imperative this year. We have moved as much as we can back. We're looking at renovating in-house renovations for our playground bathrooms instead of replacing the buildings. So we've trimmed this capital request down to the least we can. But this year, as Trustee Finneran said, the turf is a big expense, but it's probably the number one need in the Recreation Department's opinion and the Rec Commission's opinion, BCI's opinion, but also making our facilities, the high use facilities like the Fieldhouse and Cluett Hall, up to scratch, up to what the residents deserve and what they would expect from us.
Thank you. Trustee Judy?
Did anyone else have any homework? I have
Stuff.
I have 2 pool questions. One on the pool, where is the capital budget dollars for the pool slide? And how much is it? I know, but it should be in.
Slide 12. Slide 12 on the are you looking at the March 25th presentation, slide 12?
Yes,
Right, so there's only one capital project.
correct.
That's in the 5-year plan for the pool, and the only existing outstanding project this year is the pool slide that hasn't started yet.
So where's the money for the pool slide? Is
There
that in
was
the
a
news
bond-
report?
No, those are general fund projects. So there was a bond resolution that was approved by the board in the amount of $360,000, but we're awaiting next steps on that project because the bids came in higher than that.
So I guess my question is, I know we had discussed a couple of times anticipating that slide, because of various reasons, is actually going to cost us significantly more. So why wouldn't that be, we already discussed this, why wouldn't that be in the capital projects for the pool? That additional anticipated amount?
It's for next year. is, I think it's
Nothing's
for
been
fiscal.
approved on that yet. I think that it's being discussed. What's the next step, whether to move forward? Because the only thing that was approved was the $360,000 bond resolution. And that report actually is just for general fund projects, so it doesn't include pool, tennis, and water.
Oh, I didn't realize that, so thank you.
And I think there was a discussion that we could use the pool for 2 more years, wasn't there? At one of your sessions, the pool slide you felt we could get through with it for a couple more years?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put a number on that, but we definitely get through it this year, and we've maintained it and continue to maintain it. It is past its life expectancy, but it's still fully operational. So, like I said, it's an expense that we didn't see coming, and that was the conversation where we were at, was do we want to move forward with this with the amount of extra funding that it would need, but eventually it will need replacing.
So just to educate me, so how would that process work, right? So we're not anticipating including that extra amount in this capital request. Then sometime during the year, we'd have a discussion based on what you get back, and we'd add it as a capital request. Even though right now we kind of know that we're going to need more money, but we wouldn't include it in the budget.
That's correct.
That's correct. It's, if the board decided to move forward, we
Yep.
would just amend the bond
Got it.
resolution.
Okay, thank you.
And again, Andy, in your opinion, if we had to, could we push it a year if we were in that situation? In your opinion? Knowing what you know about, you've been down there all this year, so.
Knowing what I know, I would like to say yes, but I wouldn't be able to guarantee it, particularly until we turn the water on and we start running the water down the slide, and we can get there and see it and make sure that nothing happened over the winter that we weren't expecting. But I would like to think we could push it.
Yeah, and right now it's looking like it's $1 million or more for that slide, all in with controls, removals, motors, concrete, you name it. You know, that's generally what we're looking at right now from what you know.
That's what I understand, but I will continue to research into it and see what I had a conversation with the Department of Health today where it came up. It wasn't about the slide, but the slide came up and they were surprised at how high the number was. So I will do my due diligence and see if we're getting the most competitive pricing. But
Yeah, how many of these firms are out there that do this type of work? Is there a lot? Is there a limited? You know, in other words, getting multiple bids to make sure obviously we're getting the most competitive pricing.
I don't think we got that many bids. We didn't get one bid. We definitely got multiple bids, but it's not like we're getting 25, 30 bids for this.
Okay, thank you.
Now, is this going to be out of the pools and enterprise fund? So that would not actually stick in the village budget, correct? Or,
The village is currently paying for the debt of the pool. So in the general fund, you see a transfer of $300,000 to cover the debt of the pool. If this project were to go forward, obviously the debt would increase, and that would require an additional transfer from the general fund in future budgets.
but that would be bonded.
Mhm.
So therefore, and if I recall correctly, are you going to be bonding it for 10 years? Or
It would
5?
probably be around 10 years, yeah.
So 10 years, then, so whatever the amount is,
Mhm.
while it looks like a large number, it'll be spread over 10 years.
Correct, yes.
And it was 3 bids that we got for the pool. I just got a text. Somebody watching.
And the $100,000 that on the capital projects for the pool garage, I know you had said last week that you weren't, you didn't have a particular plan for how you would use that space. Could you elaborate on why that needs to get done?
Yeah, I need to clarify that. We already use that space
Yes.
to a huge capacity. We put all our equipment in there. The right side of the garage is where we store all the ice cream. The center of the garage, we store our uniforms. Left side of the garage, paint, cleaning equipment. But if we were able, what I meant by that was if we were able to if we fix the roof, because the back half of the main room is currently completely unusable because of how poor the roof is. If we fix the roof there, we would then most likely be able to add more functionality to the garage. But right now it's becoming a danger.
Got it.
So not that we don't have an idea of what we're going to use it for. We already use it, but we would be able to use it, I would imagine, more if we get these fixes done.
And my final comment is, and feel free to chime in, on your head count requests, I will say, for me, I'm reluctant at this point in time to approve those for a variety of reasons. I'm not saying that I don't think there is probably need for staffing support in various ways for your group, including the arborist. But for right now, I'm not sure that I would approve that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
No, I didn't want to surprise anybody.
I didn't know if you wanted me to.
No, no, it's, yeah, no.
Andy, going back to my favorite conversation, infrastructure. So that garage that you're talking about down at the pool, because I obviously did not see that when I was down there. You saying that basically the roof is in poor condition and it's leaking right now? It is.
It is.
Yeah.
Giuseppe knows the terminology better than me.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it's an infrastructural issue. Okay. Just want to check, make sure. Thanks, guys.
Before we move on, I don't want to leave trustee Courtney hanging. There are questions I know that I have with regard to the required the required head count, excuse me, thank you very much, and or that should say the requested head count. So it's something that, you know, we will take up when we vote. Thank you.
Okay.
While we're on head counts, the difficulty with head counts always is to plan for what you need and understand what you don't need. I personally think that the tree operation with about 12,000 trees and dividing it by the number of people who work on it, I would be in support of the 2 head counts for trees. I don't believe the rest of the head count would be appropriate this time until we actually get a superintendent who then is able to understand what the needs are of the department. The other problem with head counts is that in this village, people, while not fungible, go between one department and another. So if you don't have enough, candidly, bodies, we wind up having the same situation that we lived with when Conkel was here. And quite candidly, Trustee Muldoon picked up a broom and decided that he was going to become one of the head counts. So he did a very nice job. So I know that there is always tension about how many people you have or you don't have. But merely because you only have 9 players on the field in baseball doesn't mean that's the size of your entire team. So I would put more people on the operation for which the village is known as Tree City.
Can I
Sure.
comment?
Sure, of course.
I completely agree, but I just want to mention that the other thing that I think is completely imperative, and through my conversations with experts that we've talked about with Cornell, with golf club experts, the conditions of the fields at St. Paul's is one of the highest priorities that comes up all the time. And without being able to get an extra head count to dedicate somebody to those fields, to work year round on those fields, we aren't going to see the improvements that we want to get. And that's going to continue to be a problem. Where even if we get a synthetic turf in the village somewhere, it's not going to take away the need for quality grass fields. And right now, with the way that our staff is at capacity, we can't give those grass fields the need and the attention that they need to be able to increase the quality there. If with a dedicated member of staff there, things like, I've mentioned this before, but things like spot seeding, things like filling holes, checking irrigation heads, making sure that everything is set, and making sure even that wet areas are roped off and are not used, and high traffic areas are moved around. It is a full-time position. It is something that experts have said to me that at bigger facilities at Cornell, they've got 5, 6 people who are ground staff just for their athletics fields. The Harbor Links soccer fields with the championship golf course, their golf course crew manages their soccer fields as a full-time position. So that is something that if we're serious about improving the quality of the fields at St. Paul's, I would ask you to give serious consideration to us having an extra person who we can dedicate to those fields.
How many do we have now dedicated to St. Paul's?
Currently dedicated to St. Paul's, we have 2 guys, but they're not dedicated to the fields at St. Paul's. They're dedicated to St. Paul's, including inside of Cluett Hall and the field house. So right now, when spring starts up, they're out there mowing, low limbing, weed whacking, but then they're back in there cleaning bathrooms and doing spot fixes for little stuff that doesn't need to be contracted out in plumbing and painting and replacing light bulbs. And so we don't have anybody dedicated just to the fields. And if we have anybody go down on the central section crew, which is a weekly rotation, then one of those 2 guys is pulled from St. Paul's and goes with those guys. So again, we're even more stretched on the fields.
So you're looking for one person to be there all the time, basically.
Absolutely.
And what happens in the winter time, in the dead of winter, December, January?
So there'd still be work that they can do out there in the winter time. Obviously, if it's underneath snow, then they can't do that work. But it's still a year-round operation. There is also, when we get to the winter, is the high point of when we're at St. Paul's and Cluett. So that person would be able to, when needed, feed into the other 2 people and help them out
I
as
mean,
well.
like for the basketball programs
Yes.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What about, we were talking, actually, I don't want to take away from Rich, but I understand like on the tree staff that we're working with under Joe Umana, which it's a top priority. Are you fully staffed right now?
So that leaves us with myself, Ben. Being that he is out on comp, we've had Steve Cavalieri kind of cover for Mike Anderson, who's been out. So once Mike Anderson comes back, then the crew will kind of change a little bit, only because Steve is a new employee. He works Tuesday through Saturday. Dave Menzies, Christian Smith, Mike Anderson, and myself are Monday through Friday.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, like with all the emphasis we're putting on with the trees and what we want to do, where you talk about having 2 teams of 3 people, that all, in my mind, makes a lot of sense. But I think one of the things that I'm concerned about is the amount of people in the rec department who are getting injured for one reason or another. And I'm kind of wondering, are they getting injured because the work is dangerous and maybe it's beyond what we're doing and should be dealt with from an outside source, or like, why do we have this happening?
So with that, close to 1,000 pounds, that is truly to that. So we go to our backs. That's what's had 6 guys.
Okay. Yes, like we need to know that because I don't know that. I mean, I knew you give us a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but that's
It-
why I think your teams have to be filled. Because, and it's our goal to have beautiful trees and all that stuff. But I don't, when I see that we're kind of short-staffed and I don't understand why, that's very helpful to know.
Why we have ranch all down or state. So I have stuff out of my house for don't have to worry about safety and then getting stumps as well as work on planting anywhere from 200.
Yeah. Michelle, I think the balance here, Joe is saying in a roundabout way, and I think everybody here is it's the balance of having the right amount of village employees, and then what makes sense to subcontract out, which they're better equipped to do a lot of this work than, of course, village. But even just in general, there are certain things that employees that work for any firm or village are very equipped to do and very talented to do and very specific, versus a company who just does X, and they can come in, they can do it quicker, faster, and cheaper. And it's about finding that balance. So we're not overloading some of our employees and hiring firms that more specialize in some of this stuff. No different than what we're doing with Brightview and doing that. When it comes to the headcount, love Judy, but I'll disagree with her on this one. I do think, again, it's a balance. But I do think we need certain amount of additional staff in certain spots. And St. Paul's Field is absolutely one of them. I've been down there more than anybody this year. And somebody needs to be accountable for that field for a lot of different reasons that we've talked about. And whoever that is, I don't know who that person is, but that person needs to be qualified to be able to know what he's doing, not just a handyman that can, be asked to go into the field house and go asked to Clewett Hall and then jump back out for an hour to the fields and then jump back in for another hour into Clewett Hall and the field house. To me, we definitely need one person who is qualified to go out and take care of. It's a huge amount of acreage at St. Paul's Field. Okay.
And the other thing we need to really sit down and hammer out is this organics versus inorganics. And what's really truly, yes, the pre-emergence, but is that really just enough? And then keeping organics, not that I'm pro,
That's a whole
chemicals,
that's a
but
whole other conversation.
but we have to talk about that. I
We-
mean, it's not for tonight.
Yeah.
But
We do, but it wouldn't change the need for a person to maintain those fields. And just on Joe's point, and obviously I know Joe will talk to the tree crew, which he's very passionate about. I just want to make sure that it doesn't come solely about the tree crew. To your point of why are we getting people who are getting hurt? We have an aging staff, and we want to try and bring in new employees that are going to be here and grow and work with the village, like myself, like with Joe. But we are asking a lot of them. They are stretched to capacity. On Saturdays, we are bringing guys in on overtime to cover the need that we have for ball fields and athletic fields. With the additional headcount, we will go Tuesday to Saturday. So we'll be adding guys into there, which we're no longer asking aging employees to work 6 days a week. That is a huge factor into why people are getting hurt, because we are asking them to do a lot. And like I said, we had an initial conversation. My first request was 8 people. I knew I was never going to get 8, but there's a need there
but
for us to have.
that's why we're concerned, because if the guys or gals are getting hurt, it's like, how are we supposed to look at that? Because then if we're getting hurt, we get the right people in, but they're getting hurt because the jobs or the tasks are so difficult. That's what I'm trying to understand. And it's not I'm anti the head count. I just,
Yeah, and obviously the trees is different. It's a very high risk part of it, but in parks and recreation, it's active. Our guys are always on their feet. They're always moving. They're always using equipment. So there is a risk of injury there. So that's always going to be part of it. But my understanding or my look at it is like the increase goes up rapidly when we're asking these guys to do as much as they're doing. And that's part of the request for the extra
Andy, just
headcount.
let me try to put it into perspective, because this is a philosophical question. Did we hire Joe Urmana to create a 7-8 person tree team, or did we hire Joe to be an expert arborist and help us in all things having to do with trees? And I don't know that we hired Joe to take trees down. And I think we hired Joe to use his expertise in different areas, whether it's plantings. I know that he's an expert there. So that's my crux, or the crux of my issue. So philosophically, that's what we have to decide.
Absolutely. To that point, I would say if we do outsource some of our stump removals, our large tree removals. But in the fall of 2023 and 2024 alone, we planted over 340 new trees. So even if Joe was brought in to bring new trees in, I think as Joe mentioned in an email, these trees, when they go in, are different to established trees that have been in the village for years. New trees need coaching, they need help, they need assistance. Adding 340 new trees and no new guys to help work with them is a recipe for failure in my eyes.
And then there's the issue of the economic issue of outsourcing,
Absolutely.
as Trustee Muldoon said, outsourcing versus staffing. And, staffing is not, $70,000, $80,000 a year per head. It's that times 2 or times 1.5 or times 2.5. So there is an important balance, I think, that we have to be very cognizant of.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think that's it for recreation. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, on the tree issue,
See you
it
later.
is tough in this economic environment to think about adding staff. I think all governmental agencies are thinking about that, and especially today with what we saw in the market and the fact we have tariffs that may not go away or may go away. That could lead to inflation down the road if you speak to any economists. So I think we have to be very hesitant in this economic environment to think about, increasing staff. We always have to be very cautious. I think the other issue too is this budget, we have a lot of, favorable items that we've taken into consideration. We've had surplus from this fiscal year. We're dipping into the unassigned surplus this year for about $1.6 million. And also the insurance reserve is coming down about $1.3 million. So, it might look like we have a small increase in taxes, but, without those unusual items, it could have been a larger number. So we have to consider that factor. So that's why we're a little hesitant to add bodies. Just on the tree issue, we did make a big investment into, it looks like about $600,000 in salaries and benefits when you think about the 5 people we have, which is a big investment. I respect that for the village, being a tree city as we are. But I think we just have to pause and think about, do we want to invest another $150,000 of additional, FTEs is what we're concerned with. And are there better ways of doing it perhaps by outsourcing? So that's just kind of my thoughts on trees. And I know we have a lot of trees in the village, but they don't have to get pruned every year. I think a mature tree is every 3 to 5 years. It's not every single year. So I think we really need to take a full-blown inventory, of our tree situation. And I would focus, by the way, with this inventory, as we go about doing, I think it should be a priority to see if there are any trees that have any dangerous limbs or whatever that we're really worried about and target those first, I think, before thinking about planting. Because if there is danger that tree limbs are falling down, we should assess where those tree limbs might be coming down. I think that should be priority number 1. And I certainly don't want our guys, working and lifting things they shouldn't be lifting. Hopefully we learn from that experience, and maybe we can do some training for these people to say, don't go above what you can do. If you're too old to do it, or the limb is too big, don't hurt your back. It's just not worth it, obviously. So just a couple of thoughts on trees. I know more about trees than I thought I would in the past week or so. And then on the turf field, that's becoming very controversial right now as far as the health issues associated with turf. So maybe down the road, if you could come back and present to us the latest thinking about the pros and the cons and what the risks are. We even heard there's a bill up in Albany to outlaw turf fields in New York State. You may have heard about that. So I just think, given the very controversial nature of turf fields, and there's a lot of debate on both sides, we probably should have a good open hearing about the pros and the cons and educate us about, what that issue is. Would be very helpful.
We had 2 specialists come into the Environmental Advisory Board over the past 4 months, talk about it, and they were pretty anti turf fields. There are some new types of turf field materials that are coming out that are better, but it might be worth us bringing them back in and having a Saturday morning talk or something for the village, because we were in touch with some pretty well regarded people.
Michelle, on the other side of that, I've talked to Andy about this, and we've got multiple quotes from multiple companies on these turf fields. Each one of them, we've asked for different information on the safety of their turf, and that's all out there as well. And they have obviously the direct opposite, saying that, hey,
Yeah, but I think we should just present both sides.
oh no, absolutely, no, I'm not saying that at all.
I think that
And I-
just
and I-
allow the residents to,
Oh,
so that we
100%.
know we're
Hey, listen to me,
not just
more
jamming
conversation
it.
about, but I'm just saying also, from the residential perspective, there are a lot of turf going in both residential on your backyards and interior turf in basements that we're, as contractors, putting in as well, that, believe me, we're checking and making sure that there's nothing in those materials in any way, shape, or form that could affect the health of any kids or anybody else like that. So again, I have a lot of knowledge of this. And yeah, there are people that say, oh my God, yeah, like the old original rubber, I call them the rubber turf fields from 20 years ago, which was basically ground up tires that were getting into
Yeah, no,
kids'
they
nose.
had, we had
eat-
one speaker who was talking about how the new turf field is actually much.
Completely different, completely
correct.
different. And they,
But I think we just need to
absolutely.
kind of either have something written in the paper for
I
us
agree with
on
you.
it.
I agree with you.
Yeah, so at the presentation, I think two concerns brought up were one is PFAS and another one is rubber infill. But there seems to be products that are PFAS free and that are using materials that's not rubber infill. So there are things that we should look at and discuss because there are pros and cons. There are concerns, but there are concerns that could be addressed. So I think that would warrant a very good discussion.
And the other issue too is the injury issue. The NFL Players Union is still against turf fields as of now. And I think that's a big debate out there as far as whether it contributes to ACL injuries and knee injuries. So before we jump into something like this, it sounds very sexy and attractive. We all love turf fields, but let's just think long and hard about the pros and the cons before we move forward. And one final thing on the slide, could maybe down the road, maybe not today, but get a better, I mean, we're trying to save a 150-year-old building. Could we save like a 20-year-old slide? I don't want my first vote to be for the $1 million slide. So if there's a way of thinking about, can we save that slide? What is actually deteriorating on it? Is it the metal? Can the metal be replaced? Is it the fiberglass slide? Maybe just a little bit more education about, is there an option to add 10 years to the slide like we're trying to add another 100 years to St. Paul's, for example? Just not a bad analogy, but you know what I mean. Perhaps there's a way of extending its life.
So I did visit the slide and I took a look and they do a pretty good job maintaining and painting. But if you look at it, the metal and the structure, it's the years, it's
The biggest
It
problem on
needs
it
to
is
be-
the seams between the pieces as they start to be, as they get older, it becomes not that pleasant of a ride down a slide with every time you go onto a different piece, you feel
very
the seam.
bumpy.
So
yeah.
Then maybe I'll go this year.
Yeah.
I would
Check your bathing suit.
say that the,
Take your bathing suit.
And also that metal, that metal also, like if you use the slide, I mean, I enjoy it too. Not maybe not as much as my kids, but I do enjoy the slides. Water comes down all the time. So that metal, even with that coat of paint, it's in the water, it's, submerged in the water all the time. The water comes down on it.
I know I'm moving off, but I will say, as far as the slide, don't get too cheap on the slide because the pool is like such a gem. People move here because of our pool, and it is and has been since it was put in the highlight of the Garden City pool. And we can't, when it's time to get a new one, we want to. And BCI is fantastic. They do a lot of pool work. So if it hasn't happened already, I think we should ask them about different companies and what would be, because they, trends and stuff. There were some different looking slides that are popular now, but I think, get it right on the slide because it's a big part of the pool. It's a big investment. We'll probably have it for as long as we've had this one. So, that's my 2 cents.
I just want to mention, as far as maintenance, about 6 or 7 years ago, we had the entire slide recoded so it could go down. It properly was slowing down. So we did extend the life in that way. But I think what Trustee Ty was talking about, the infrastructure around it, the metal, the seams, the other stuff, we can't fix those things with, a paint job.
Now, when we went out to bid, it's the normal process. But my suspicions are that BCI probably has a different Rolodex than we do. And asking them to give us a more in-depth source of vendors would be an excellent use of our time and energies.
Yeah, most of the bread and butter stuff we go out for, roofs, HVAC system, concrete, asphalt, the more vendors do that. And when we go out to New York State Contract Reporter, there's going to be more people applying. These specialized products, it probably behooves us to call a person like BCI, a company, and see if we can find these specialized vendors and invite them into the, because they might not participate on the New York State contract before if they're out of state especially. So it's a good idea.
I think we're ready to move on. And again, Mr. Andy, oh, we have one comment.
Yes,
Trustee Wu.
before we move on from recreation,
Yes.
are there any changes that are proposed to the budget?
What, the head counts, what's
Yeah.
our consensus on?
The head count. So I don't know that we are prepared as a group to articulate what that number is. Right now, it's 4, correct? It's 2 under Andy's Ballywick and 2 under Mr. Joe. So is it proper to take a vote now? I don't know if it's proper to take a vote.
Maybe
I guess we
defer
can.
to,
I guess we can take a vote, can't we?
It's a noticed meeting.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we divide it into 2, all right, 2 separate,
Wait, can I ask a process
Sure.
question first? So there were other items brought up about, can we, might change that, or should we look at that? And recreation's a good example of that. So we're just voting on the head count question, like
well,
not anything
I-
else?
I don't, Judy, you did go through, a number of pointed questions.
Right,
um,
like the pool garage, are we gonna vote on that now? Are we gonna, right? I'm
I
not sure
don't-
how this is working.
It may be more appropriate, and you've been here before we're not voting on it, so
Right,
for
right.
you to just have a conversation here publicly and propose what you would propose we do and see if you have support of the people who will be voting. Right?
Okay. Now, should we go
I
back?
don't know, Ms. Wu, is that,
So the point of tonight is to decide, finalize the changes. You direct me what changes to make to the tentative budget so I can work on the new revised budget for tomorrow morning, post it on the website, and then so the residents know what budget is being adopted on Monday,
Okay.
because we have a public hearing scheduled for Monday.
Not procrastinating is a better way. Okay.
Thank you.
So I will make the following motion that we take a pass this year on adding to Mr. Urmana's team and add 1 individual to the rec headcount for the fields.
My position is put the 2 on Joey and 1 on rec for St. Paul's.
Not going to be easy.
No, not.
no.
Okay. All right, so I think what we should do is we should vote on my motion, and then if it doesn't pass, we'll then move to the next idea. So do I have a second for my motion?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
I'm gonna abstain since I'm
Yeah,
not
of
going to be voting on the
I guess we
budget.
both have to abstain?
You don't
Sure.
have to, but it just doesn't make sense.
And there's 6 of us. All right, so
but
all,
should Rich just express?
no,
his-
Rich
No.
Rich can't vote.
Okay.
No. Sure. So,
But Rich could state what his
Yeah, could he
thoughts would
state
be
his
because it's
thoughts?
relevant. He
course.
will be a vote.
of course, so
Okay.
there's 6 who will be voting. Okay. My proposed motion states that we will not add to the tree crew this year, and we will add 1.
Oh, wait a minute, we can do it, adjust it midway, like as we talked about, right? You can do.
You can always add them later.
Yeah, we can defer now, right? And then we
Take it off.
can,
Can't we adjust it? Like, I think that.
What do we?
Important.
No, I understand, but I think the easiest way to do it is to vote on my motion, and if it does not pass, we'll seek another motion from another trustee. Does that make sense?
I think what trustee Harrington is suggesting is that we defer the headcounts to after the budget. Is that correct? So midway, maybe in a month or 2, when we have better information,
Yeah, I
we
think so.
revisit this separately?
You have to put in the
yeah,
budget.
we
You have to
do,
vote
we
on a
do,
budget with a head
We
count.
do. So if we
Can we
defer,
modify the budget?
Yes, you can modify the budget after June 1st. You can modify it. If you choose to defer the headcount now, and then in a few months, you revisit this and say, yes, we do need the additional headcount. We could always take it out of surplus or contingency, whatever. Could
But
always
there'll be
modify
a
it.
budget voted on Monday.
Yes,
So
Correct,
yes.
he's
correct.
proposing that budget only have one
One of
additional
the-
head count
correct.
in recreation.
I just wanted to, for full transparency as well, with this being my first budget, I made a mistake. My initial budget, as I said, was a request for 8 additional people, and that was taken into account when I budgeted the overtime line and the part-time help line. So if this is decreased significantly, if you turn around and give me 1 person, I will have to give Miss Wu new numbers for what I predict our overtime will be, because as I said, we're using guys on Saturdays, which we were hoping those new guys would go into, and that would eliminate that overtime. That's essential overtime that we really can't not do if people want the ball fields the way they are, they want the athletic fields the way they are. So I just wanted to be on the record as
That's fine. That is, we appreciate that comment.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move for a vote.
Can I, one last question, then you
Of
can. move to
course.
the- Of course. Come on, Ed, I have to have one last question. So Irene, hypothetically, if we go ahead with hypothetically, 1 employee, right? Okay, we can always add another employee sometime later on this year or middle of this year or whatever we want,
That's correct.
correct?
Yes.
So that's all I want to know. So if we add 1, we can always add another 1 or 2 down the road. Okay,
Correct.
just want to make that clear. Okay, great.
And the time, there's no limit. We can add it in a month, we could add it in 3 weeks, we could.
You can add it once the budget is in effect after June 1st. This budget starts June 1st, so anytime after June 1st.
All right, all in favor? All right. All opposed? The opposed take it? 4-2.
Let me explain why I believe that 2 for trees and 1 for rec makes the most sense. Merely because you do not have the head count doesn't eliminate the expenses. So let us assume, as Mr. Hill has stated, that he would have to increase his budget for overtime. That means that you're now paying for 1.5 times the person that if they were a salaried employee. And more importantly, right now is essentially the time when the village needs to gear up for the spring, for the summer, to do those tasks that are necessary to maintain the integrity. I lived through the beginning part of going to Conkel. And what I considered to be the emaciation of the staff, in which we thought that going to outside vendors would save us boatloads of money. It doesn't. Part of the point is, if you have the right number of people doing the tasks that you have charged them to do, you then have the opportunity to hit those curveballs that you get later on. For instance, we had many years ago, basically a tornado touched down, I believe it was on John Street. And you could see it went down the entire street, took all the trees down. When that occurred, the village could not get the other companies, the outside vendors, to come in because they were busy doing other things. And the question is, if you decide to outsource and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and Commissioner Jackson says, I got a tree that's down, you're not waking up a contractor. What you're basically doing is calling Joey and says, Joey, get your crew down here. We had that. That situation occurred on Adelphi. And then as soon as we saw Adelphi and went down South Street, I said, I lived through trees and cases that they fall on people in cars. I said, please go down to Stewart Avenue because I don't like those trees. So planting trees that are very large, taking down trees that are very large will always have to be done by a contractor that has the equipment. We do not have that. We have a truck on order, which as it comes in, will give more flexibility. So on my mind, 2 and 1 gives the village the flexibility needed to do the tasks that we have to do internally and to delegate to 1 person the task of making sure that St. Paul's does not become the front page of every article in the Garden City News saying, what are we doing?
Well, it seems to me, trustee Torino, that the near emergency on South Street,
Mhm.
was handled well, and it was handled by the current staff. I also think, and I agree with others here, and trustee-elect Ritchie, that we have a potentially very bombastic and unpredictable economic environment, both macro and here at home. So I think Joe and his team, this is absolutely no commentary, Mr. Joe, on your abilities and your team's abilities, but I think it's time to tighten the belt. And if we add 2 head count there, conservatively, what's that, 300,000 all in? I'm getting 250 to 325, I'm guessing. I think it's still worth us pausing and addressing the issue next year.
And the reason I went on that vote with Ed was very simple. One is better than none. So if to me, we take the one, and if I was taking that one, I would put it at St. Paul's Fields, because the amount of use our young kids and our young parents get out of any place in this village, that is the number one place that needs the most help, and they need help down there. And I would assign that one person to start to Andy and his crew down at St. Paul's Field, and any help short term to get us out of a bind that Joe would need. I would hire an outside firm short term just to give him the help he needs, whether it's planting some trees or taking down some trees. And that's the logic I would have used on that one. But again, we can go ahead in the near future and add employees if we want to.
Andy, just out of curiosity, did you kind of calculate the amount of overtime you might have to have as opposed to the expense for hiring an additional employee? Because as Mayor-elect Finneran said, it's not just the salary, it's benefits and everything else that go along with it. Have you balanced that out?
The best thing I can do is give you an example of something that, like the project that Joe has already done from bringing it in-house as opposed to outsourcing it. In the fall of 2023, we outsourced our tree plantings. It cost us approximately $115,000 all in to put about 200 trees in the ground. When Joe did the fall plantings this year, inclusive of the overtime that we incurred, it cost around about $35,000. So it's
Oh.
How do you calculate the labor for Joe's team? I mean, it's complicated.
Just to final it out.
But I understand that you're asking what happens if you bring
Overtime,
somebody in, and as opposed to I would have to go.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
Um,
Thank you.
I'm just going to chime in as to share with you. I support and appreciate the words of Ed and Rich Catalano, who's coming onto the board, and Vinny. Headcount is big, future is uncertain, and I think being financially conservative is an important role right now. And I know it's hard to say no, but I don't think, especially when it's things that can be outsourced, I think it's the way I think we should go. If anyone.
So what are we doing? Are we voting on
So
Bruce's?
now we vote. Do you want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we do 2 for tree and 1 for St. Paul's.
Second.
What do you think about changing it 1-to-1? 1 for Joe and 1 for Rec.
Wait, I want to understand process because I have a completely different motion.
No, I
Right, so
understand.
that's what
I
I mean.
understand.
I
So
don't wanna- yeah.
the motion that stands now is 2 for the tree group and 1 for the fields broadly, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor of that motion?
Not the
All-
first time I've been alone.
All opposed? All right, we'll try it again. Miss Courtney?
You're going to have such a fun year, aren't you? So my motion is
Sure.
to have 0 headcount increase And I say that for a couple of different reasons. One is that we have, I believe there are probably ways to look at organization and staffing across rec, not just trees, right, but across rec. So that's one thing that the BCI 10-year plan will help us with that I don't know that we've spent a lot of time on. Secondly, we have hopefully a new head of recreation starting within the very short term. And my experience is that I would never bring in additional headcount when I knew I had a new leader coming in who may have a very new set of eyes. I'm not great about having increased overtime, but overtime is a cost that is not forever. And hiring people between pension and all other costs associated with them are forever costs, right? So I just don't think it's the right time. I think there will be adds to headcount or changes in responsibility over the next few months. I just don't know if I'm ready to commit that these are the right ones. So I would ask for no headcount increase.
Do I have a motion for no head count?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor of no head count, raise your hand. Okay,
Now we
So-
got Michelle.
So I
all
have,
opposed? Hang on, all opposed? Just to make it official? Okay, 4. Okay, that fails.
okay,
Michelle's turn.
okay, I'm last one. So I think Joy is doing a great job. I do think we need people, but I mean, I do think we have a lot of trees and it needs more attention. It needs to be taken care of. I think the question is, how do we give him the support that he needs? A person or balancing in-house and out-house, I think that needs to be discussed. But I do think, between the trees, between the flowers and the fields, so I'll make a motion to add 1 headcount, but as a floater.
Sorry,
A floater. So just right now, just no designated role, but to be able to help out with the trees and the flower and when needed for other things.
just a quick question to Andy and Joe. Would you be pulling from the same pool, or would the tree person hopefully have tree experience and the person on the fields have experience tending to fields?
So what we've put in the budget is for a labor position. So it's an entry level position. We can look for experience, but it's going to be a civil service position. You hope that you could get somebody with experience with the allure of the benefits and the long term
Okay.
stuff here. But
So you're not, excuse me, you're not hiring a resume, so to speak,
No.
with an experienced
no.
folk in either area.
From a civil service perspective, I don't know that you can have somebody float in between such discrete responsibilities.
It's the laborer, I think.
Labor, okay.
Can I just mention also, like trustee-elect Catalano, I'm not a tree expert, but I've worked with a lot of tree people, very happy working with Joe. One thing about, or Joey, I should call him. One thing about tree people is that you want to use the same person as often as you can because of knowledge and skill. Working around trees is dangerous. Not just taking limbs down, but if a tree falls and the limb is torqued and you cut it the wrong way, it'll snap back and kill you. There's so much to know about trees, working around them. On the other hand, the field guys too, it's not just putting grass seed down and watering it. It's a learned skill you want to keep there. You can't rotate people in and around. So the floater idea is what we do today. We steal people from streets and put them on sanitation, labor positions, so like that technically, but the skill sets that
We're
Joe is
looking for.
asking for and Andrew's asking for, you want to put a person there that's going to stay with that job so you get the best output from them versus moving them around all the time.
Can
My-
just one thing though, to follow up on Jessica's idea though, is could a laborer title help during planting season with just the plantings? And has that ever been done? I know it was recently that we brought the plantings in-house. We had been outsourcing plantings, but have we ever had a laborer? And is that something that could be done? If the 1 head count added was a laborer, would there be flexibility for them to help out during the planting season? with the digging?
I don't think it's ever been done. My opinion on it is that it would be counterproductive to us as a department as a whole, in that for exactly what Ralph said and for what we're looking for in our sustainability and growth as a department, we don't, and it would almost be impossible to bounce somebody from the tree crew to St. Paul's to then go and help on the leaf crew. We have an organizational chart where we feel we have our deficiencies. This was why the initial request was for 8 people, because that would get us to full staff. If we are going to get new people, I would like them to be new people that are put into a position that they will grow in and stay there and progress through. And for what it's worth, as much as, and Joe knows this, as much as I'm very appreciative of the work that Joe does and the extra responsibilities he's taken on, the additional person at St. Paul's, in my opinion, is the biggest need. The second additional person we asked to go on Steve Barnich's crew out of the 4, the planting, would then also supersede the 2 people on Joe's crew, based on how long we've needed those people on those 2 crews. With Joe being a very young crew, as so to speak, is something that they've only just started taking in-house. We can continue to work at capacity. It's not ideal for him, but maybe next year, we depend on where we are, we can add 2 to Joe. But you guys have got to make the decision. But our opinion, as through the conversations I've had with my supervisors, is that the number 1 priority is the person at St. Paul's.
Okay.
And I would agree, Andy, 110%. And then I'm going to finish at that note. Whatever person we hire, again, the big difference in a utility player, right? The term utility player versus somebody specific. If we hire somebody for St. Paul's, that person has to be trained and has to learn the ins and outs of the entire property of St. Paul's and be dedicated to that. If Joe needs a guy to work with him on his crew or 2 for trees, that's what they do. They cut down trees, they plant trees, they understand trees, that's what they do. Once in a while, they can interchange. Once in a while in an emergency situation, that's fine. But overall, when you're hiring somebody for a specific position, they have to be dedicated to that position. Otherwise, again, it doesn't work in my view. So thank you.
All right, if I have an idea here, but we have,
A motion
do
pending.
you want to, is there a motion, or is there just a suggestion? There's not a formal motion. Is there a motion to hire 1 single laborer? Do I have a second?
So moved.
Okay. So on the vote,
Here's just add 1 laborer.
Correct.
Just the budget to reflect the addition of a headcount of 1 laborer.
correct. So all in favor of 1 laborer, and I might add something,
Michelle has a comment.
Michelle?
My motion is not specifically for the field, it's a floater, because right now my difficulty is I have a difficulty assigning this 1 laborer to a specific job. They could do the fields and they could do planting, because right now I see planting as a big need right now in the village with all the demands and the trees we're putting in, and the flowers too. So I feel there may be a need of a hand. And with St. Paul's, we're upping the applications of organics from 2 to 6 this year. We are improving things. We are planning so the turf field is also in the plans. And I think eventually it's going to help. I'm not quite sure. I feel now we're in the process and we don't have a final product that we're maintaining yet. And we could be spending a lot of money. We are still testing what works, what doesn't work on the field. And we might dig up a lot of it to turn that into the turf field. And then it's a different type of maintaining we're talking about when we have a hybrid, the turf and natural. And we are not quite sure when that time is. So I understand the demand and the need for this 1 person. I just see this as we're still in the process. I don't see this being the top priority, just because we're still trying to see what works on that field, what doesn't work on the field. If we're doing turf, you're not doing turf.
Before we make the vote, excuse me, Jess, we cannot, and I will not, and I would suggest that this board not direct Mr. Hill how to use this person. So he will decide where this person goes at all times. So the motion on the floor right now is to add one head count.
To
It's
recreation.
correct. And the big boss will decide how that person will be utilized. Okay, all in favor
As a labor.
as a laborer? All opposed? Okay,
Winner.
we do. Yeas carry it 5-1.
We got it. Got one.
And Andy,
One is better than none.
you continue to set records here, with time spent in that chair. Okay. And I don't see anybody falling asleep in the rear, so we're going to move right to libraries. Thank you very much, Mr. Hill.
Thanks,
And thank you very much,
Andy, yeah.
Mr. Joe. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
Gotta say this out loud. 'cause-
You did say it.
Gotta say the.
And
amount.
one other thing
What do
that
we
I
have?
think we all can agree is that we will revisit
Yes, absolutely.
this issue June 1st.
Absolutely.
All right, sometime in June.
Mayor and trustees,
Yeah.
Mr. Hill did mention that when he originally put his budget request in, he had 8 head count, which was reduced to 4. And at that time, because we talked about this today, when he brought it down to 4, he did not increase the overtime, and now it's down to 1. So he has to make an overtime adjustment, but we don't have a number right now.
No,
That can be done
That's fine.
internally,
Yeah,
right? You can give
yes.
that to Ms.
No, that's
Wu
fine.
before
That's
it's
okay.
posted.
if you can do that tomorrow, Mr. Hill, that would be great. If that's okay. Treasurer Wu. Okay,
Just wanted
thank
to
you very
point
much.
out it's going to change.
Thanks, guys.
Might want to let that seat cool off a little bit, Mary Ann. I hate to do this, but I'm looking over at trustee Gordon,
Get my little notes.
although these are good. These are
That's
more unilateral than some of the others, I think, feeling.
Never say that. Okay, I will start. So my first question is on head count. So I have one question. Let me start with that on head count. So I know that you are looking for the addition of 1 maintainer, right? You have 2 part-time maintainers.
They are maintenance helpers.
Maintenance helpers, okay. And you have an outside organization that does some cleaning.
Yes, that's under the DPW department, the same company that does Village Hall.
And approximately how many hours, or are they there every day, every week? What's their deal?
They work. They provide cleaning to the restroom facilities only around the early evening hours or late afternoon, around 4 or 5. I think that's approximately an hour, but it's not quantified. And then they come in the evening and work from library closing until their work is completed. That also varies. So I'd say on the average, it's about 2 hours a day, and it's usually 2 workers.
4 hours of head count. Okay, so if I did my math, so if we have 2 part-time, you're asking for 1 full-time, that's 70 hours of coverage a week. Plus 4, so we could add those 4 hours a day, 5 days a week they are, or 7 days a week?
6.
So there's 7 days a week.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, but they're not all.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
rough numbers, so that's fine, so 28,
But our 2 part-timers don't work half the time.
but they could,
They
That's
could,
right.
why don't they?
because we're currently working with the staff that DPW shares with us until 4 PM, and my staff work from 4 to 7 on Mondays through Thursdays, and then cover Saturday and Sunday and Friday off as well. So,
Okay, so
yeah.
I don't want to know how many hours DPW gives you. So I guess here's the essence of my question is the library, if I did my math right, is open 68 hours a week, 68 hours a week.
5 hours.
That's even
during
better.
the summer, and 61 during
Okay.
from mid-June to September.
So if I looked at how much coverage you have from the cleaning crew, 2 part-timers who quite frankly, somebody's working between whether it's Giuseppe's team or your team, the two part-timers are working a number of hours, right? And a full-time maintainer, I think you have too much coverage is the bottom line. And I would like to reduce that head count. I'm not sure by how much, but if you do the math, you have more coverage than hours open.
So, yeah, at the moment, we don't because the DPW staff are not fully with us all the time, although they are very readily available. However, we would be adjusting our part-time staff to some degree accordingly once we determine what the schedule would be for the maintainer. For example, if we put them on Tuesday to Saturday so that we have steady coverage on Saturday there in the building, then we might need a part-timer to work on Sunday and Monday. And that still leaves us with some evening hours. But if we staff the person to work later in the day, like say 10 to 6, we might not need the evening, you know, some adjustments may vary that schedule.
Right, but then you have the vendors come later in the day.
Yes, but they're just doing cleaning. We have other tasks that, yes, during the primary part of the day, they would do, as I had mentioned to the board, we had reviewed the job descriptions, both the responsibilities listed in the civil service description for a maintainer and actual tasks that Chris and Frank have performed in the last year. And it includes everything from troubleshooting plumbing problems to determine where the leak is coming from, whether or not it's something they can repair on site, and whether or not it's sewer plumbing versus standard plumbing, to troubleshooting the elevators to prevent a service call, pest remediation, hanging photos and moving furniture,
Okay.
et cetera.
So I
there's
thought,
tasks above what my part-time staff do, and they're not cleaning tasks. So cleaners, part-time maintenance helpers, and maintainers all perform different tasks.
and I thought we said last week that I guess maintainer, I don't know which, or the part-timers could clean the bathrooms.
Yes, they could. So
So,
we could possibly relieve the midday turnover in the library on the long days, on the 11-hour days, and that could reduce the contract under DPW.
Ms. Courtney, would
See
you
where I'm
mind if
going.
I
I will be happy to
interject?
have someone else jump in.
Thank you. I would ask Superintendent Barone to grab a mic, please.
There's too much money spent in one thing.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees.
Good evening. Mr. Barone, do you have an opinion on the efficacy and the necessity of hiring a maintainer at the library?
Yes, sir. I fully support the position, like I've mentioned before. Even though it is a full-time employee for the library, it's also for DPW. Just to tie into the project manager request out of the building department, correct me if I'm wrong, Giuseppe, but this person is going to be hired to identify problems with our infrastructure and buildings. When they're identified, someone's got to fix them, right? And that's Chris and Frank. So if they're spending most of their time at the library, it would be difficult for them to fix other areas that are identified within DPW and the library and other buildings as well.
But we're hiring a
Thank you.
facilities person to do that, so I don't.
Well,
see
to
that that's the
identify,
Maintenance person.
but not make the repairs.
We have not as yet.
So John, I got a couple of quick things, and Giuseppe probably ties into both of you guys. How many hours did those two lads spend on average a week in the library, helping out the library with things that they need? Approximately.
Probably 5 to 6 hours are there, I would imagine, every day.
Yeah. Every day?
Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. And those two individuals, their first names again, I think I know them, but
Mr. Chris Basile and Francesco Biancamano.
great. And their positions and titles?
Maintenance supervisor is Chris and maintenance helper is Francesco.
Yes, these are not laborers or obviously not in any way, shape or form, correct?
No, sir, they do perform semi-skilled work, you know.
So in essence, what you're trying to say is this, if we go ahead and we hire this maintainer for the library, that it will free them up and have them do a million other things that you need them to do, that they're obviously seems like they'll be very qualified to do other things besides doing this stuff at the library, correct?
Absolutely. Just the other day, we had a leak at the fire department and Chris and Frank were able to buy some copper and solder it and make the repair themselves, saving us probably about $1,000.
Excellent, excellent. And then Irene, a quick one for you, and I'm done, is this maintainer all in with benefits, what are we talking on approximately for this position? How much would it cost the village all in with, benefits, the whole package, roughly?
I think the salary is 53 for the salary.
So that's similar to the position for the laborers or
Rec.
it's a little higher. The laborer was 45,000 and all in, the cost would be anywhere between $65,000 to $85,000 for next year. Obviously, those costs go up. The following year, it would go up $20,000 approximately for pension costs and step increases like that. So
Gotcha.
it would go up to $100,000 a year.
Yeah, so 85 is the number I had in my head. All right, that's great. I just wanted to know generally where it was. Okay, great. Thanks. That's great information. Thank you.
I'd just like to add
Thank you,
one
Mr.
thing.
Barone. Yes.
Sorry.
Quite all right.
So Chris and Frank do currently maintain the police department, the fire department headquarters, both firehouses, although one is down. Should this person get hired, I do intend on increasing their scope to cover the DPW yard as well. So that's a building that needs attention as well.
Thank you, sir.
Irene, I can't find this. Isn't there a page in here that talks about how headcount is allocated between departments? Did I see that? First one. So if they're 5 to 6 hours a day just at the library, that means they should be allocated to the library, I don't know, what, 80%?
So I'm sorry, you're talking about the DPW employees?
Mhm.
Yes, are they allocated?
No.
I don't believe so, no.
It's allocated 20%. Yeah, we don't allocate anything to the physical plant, the library.
So they don't get allocated to that. Okay. So that's a lot of hours, 5 to 6 hours. So we have someone there 5 to 6 hours a day from John Baroni's staff. We have 2 part-timers who are there.
We have 2 from Mr. Baroni's staff.
Oh, yeah, 2.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then we have 2 part-timers who are there some number of hours. Then we have a vendor who's there 4 hours a day because there's 2 times 2. And then we're asking for a full-time head count to be there. Just
But it-
feels like a lot.
But it feels like if the maintainer is hired, of course, Mr. Baroni's staffers will vacate the premises,
Both of them?
be able to.
Yes, that's correct.
One other thing that I think is, and I understand concerns over the cost and I voiced that, but how many people come through the library every month?
So in the month of March, it was about 13,500. And that's a little lower than February, but February was school recess. It is up from the prior year. I'm just looking for that statistic in my notes. But we're up in general for the first quarter of the year, about 25 or 27% from the first quarter of last year.
So I frequent the library myself and it is bustling. Kids are going there to study. They're the toddlers, tons of stuff going on with story times. I don't think it's surprising that we're calling upon DPW hours every day. And I think this is, while I voiced my caution on headcount, I think this is a smart one.
Could we move on to capital requests? Or is there any other final comment on
Like take a vote on this?
maintainer? Well, I think maybe what we do is we finish up on capital, or do you want to vote right now? I can make a motion.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do that? Okay. So I move that an additional headcount request of 1 maintainer be granted.
So moved.
All in favor? All opposed?
Welcome to.
The
my
ayes have it.
Thank you.
So
We're
one
up there.
opposed, rest in favor, 2 abstain.
I think 2 abstain. I think Miss Irene is taking notes. She's the note taker. Thank you. Okay, so finally we have capital requests on the library. Is there anything that the library would like to say on those capital requests before
just,
we have a conversation?
Before we move on to
Sure.
this, I know I voted yes to the maintainer headcount. I do want to caution about the hours allocated between part-timers and the maintainer, and to really look into the busy times and then the quiet times. And I know you have all the bathrooms, the bathroom that gets used a lot and the bathroom that not get used a lot, just to really use these tools not tools, people, right? Employees and people and all your resources very wisely. And I do trust you in doing that. So I just think that's important to point out.
Thank you. Yes, will definitely be taken into account. We want to run the library efficiently, and we recognize the benefit that the additional maintainer will afford us. So thank you for that. And we'll prepare to take that under advisement and also consult with John and Giuseppe, who've been very helpful in making these decisions and allocating emergency resources when I didn't have other people available. So I thank them for their support and all of you as well.
Right. So if it means you could scale back on part-timers,
Yes.
and please do consider that as. Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you. So we're going to move to capital projects. Is there anything you want to state? There are some comments up here and
I think it's okay for me to wait to hear your questions and then respond to those.
Sure. Okay. I for one believe that we should pause on both of those requests. It became apparent that they are they have not been fleshed out. And although the program with regard to the lighting on the first and second floor versus the work that's hoped to be done on the, you don't call it the basement, you don't.
Lower level.
Lower level, thank you very much. That needs to be refined as well. So in light of where we are broadly in terms of capital projects for the year and a fair handful that have yet to be tallied, and the Western Firehouse being one, the fire training facility being another, I would suggest, I would move that they be paused and considered in 25, 26.
The commentary I have to that, and by the way, I agree with you in principle, and that is, while the project should be paused, how do we accommodate the initial working up of what that project costs? And where does that come into the budget? Meaning that right now for the lights and the painting, that would be done outside, in which you just wind up getting a couple of bids for it and say, okay, this is what it's going to cost. Do we want to pay for it or not? But that's a different process than the lower level, in which you're going to need some professional standards to apply. And the question then becomes for this board, where do you allocate that money for the project that may be funded sometime in the future? So where would what amount of money or what pool would we get?
So if you, this is a good point for me to jump in if you don't mind, and I
That was the
discussed this.
softball.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know, I'm getting better at spotting those. So anyway, first of all, we have a proposal for schematic. The village did some simple schematic drawings for us, which was very helpful for us to have initial conversations with the library board and try to get the project rolling. We had been talking about the meeting rooms for a while. Their usage has been so much more tremendously increased. We used it many times in the last year for village meetings as well as library programs. We have community programs and things like that in the meeting rooms as well. The technology is outdated. The furniture and all of the finishes need to be updated. But more importantly, we've actually turned those spaces into study space only in February already because of the high demand that we have for tables and seating for students working on all of their academics this year. And we haven't even gotten to final exams yet. May is the busiest time for us for that. The media room, which currently houses the physical media items like DVDs and audiobooks, those materials could be moved upstairs and we could repurpose that space. And the computer lab also could be downsized or repurposed possibly to another secondary technology space or other plans. And H2M, which has an excellent library division, could be really helpful in us reimagining that space. But what I learned from working on the children's project is that when you start out with a schematic drawing, you could be in one ballpark, but you need to check out the existing conditions and do the design development phase to discuss what those needs truly are and work with the architects. And then before you even know what your actual cost is going to be when you open those bids, you have to do the construction documents, you have to do the permitting, you have to go out to bid, and all of those phases cost money. And H2M gave me, I met with them extensively in early January, and they gave me a proposal which was approved by the village and the library boards for us to execute, but the contract hasn't been signed yet because we're going over language. Nonetheless, it's been fully my intention for us to dive in and to start developing the schematic phase, which we have fully funded. We have $102,000 available in the meeting room and lower level project accounts. And that will fund the $65,000 that is on the proposal that has already been approved. The funding I asked for in the upcoming year, $160,000, comprises approximately $156,000, which is based on the rough estimated cost of $3 million. And we use, that's the high end of the figure that Katie Stone from H2M gave me so that I would have an ample number. And then we could use that as an estimate because we don't know where this is going to land yet. That, right. So the $3 million is a ballpark, but the construction cost is in the next year. So we can modify that. What I used it for was to get to the fees for the architect to develop the design development, construction documents, and bidding and negotiation, everything prior to construction. Those costs come to $48,000, $96,000, $12,000, and they total $156,000. So, and what I learned as I did this the first time with the children's room is that it wasn't until we got through those phases that we realized what the true costs were going to be of the children's room, and we had to come back and ask for the cost. Again, it did increase further throughout the project, which I appreciate, but that was partly due to modifications and developments that were made during the project plan. So I can't even give you a better number than the $3 million that's in the 27-year budget until we go through this phase. So I'm really trying aggressively to get there because by 9 months from now, I need to know what their cost opinion is. And they won't give me the cost opinion until we've done the design development. And this is a much bigger project than the Children's and Circulation Desk was. So we really want to get it going. And I won't be able to start that process beyond a simple schematic drawing if I don't get the $156,000 funding that were the $160,000 that we requested for the lower level project.
Is this $150,000 going to help you decide what to put down there? Is that the objective? Or
That's
you
the
know- or you
process
know-
to decide. Sorry to
it's
cut you
It's
off.
to decide.
Yes, in other words, while we go through, they can give us some scenarios about what would fit into this space and what are other libraries doing. In addition to that, while I make reference to that, 3 of our 5 trustees are here. 2 of them are in the process of developing a survey to ask the community, what are your needs? Do you need more study and workspace? Do you want to see a makerspace in the library? Do you want to see a podcasting area? We want to gather the feedback so that we know what is important to the residents of this village to enhance the library services. And this is, like I said, just a third of the library that we want to update and bring up to speed, but it's the direction that libraries are moving. It's programs and activities in the library. So that's why I need the money. We're hoping to come up with the design that meets the manifest of what the residents want and what the library board and ourselves think is in the best interests of the community, and that we think that the village board will support. And then it'll be my goal to come back to the village and flesh that out for you next February and March, and hopefully you'll approve the funding for the following year's construction.
the
And if
sim-
that's pushed out or phased, we can discuss that then.
Yep.
But I can't get anywhere if I don't have the $160,000.
So
And
the
again,
simple,
it's an estimate.
the simple statement is
Yes,
the dollars for the project are getting deferred, but you need the 156 so that we have an estimate of where we're going.
right. The second part about the dollars being deferred, they were already in the second year. I don't know if you meant push it further or the same, but nonetheless, we're not starting any construction or the heavy lifting until we do the 160, correct?
How much
Okay,
square
so-
footage down there? How big is the facility?
I don't know the downstairs square footage, one of the guys
It's-
might know, but it's 38,000. The
Thirty-
whole building is 38,000
Whole
square
building's
feet.
Okay.
Could you remind me of the breakup of the 160? I know you're combining the design with the upstairs, right?
Sure. So
So-
architect's fees
Yeah.
for a construction project like this, there are 5 categories. Schematic design, which is, that's the first phase where you come up with the rough, like a box floor plan of what it's going to look like. That's the phase that I currently have enough funding to pursue. Then design development, which is extensive discussions and planning for what we put in each space. Construction documents, actually drawing up the blueprints, and then the actual documentation necessary to go out to bid and open the bids and check the references and all of that stuff, right up to where we would then know, say, that ABC Construction has bidded at 2.6 million. And then we would know what the cost is, and hopefully that would be before January.
Okay, so let me jump in. That's good information. So to simplify it from a character who's in this world, obviously. So 156 gets you H2M to do all the design phase all the way through, complete detailed construction plans, and be able to put it out to bid so you can get accurate estimates as to what the lower level of the library is going to cost.
Correct.
Is that the easiest way to describe it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And then you mentioned 102,000 earlier, went over my head, like some things do. What was that 102,000 for? Where is it allocated? And what was that 102 going to be used for? Or has it been used?
So in the current year's budget, they're listed as 2 separate items, the meeting room project and the computer lab and conference room project, because I thought we would be doing them in phases or as 2 separate projects. And it was recommended to me to consider them as one project for cost efficiency. So we proposed, and I asked Irene to put it into this year's budget as a lower level renovation project. So right now, one of those accounts has $102,000. I'm sorry, one of those accounts has 52, and one of those accounts has $50,000 in it. And I'm not sure which one was which, but if we combine the projects, it has 102. That's been allocated over the last a couple of years of budgets for us to plan out, get this design and schematic drawings, because we've been talking about this for a while, but we haven't sat down and put, the actual plans to work yet.
So the question is, again, has the 102,000 been spent already, or is it just sitting there?
It's not spent. There's no encumbrances against that money.
Okay, so the 102 is sitting there, and you're going, what is your plan, again, one more time, just for clarity?
In the first phase,
Which is the schematic phase.
Schematic phase, which is agreed to at $64,000.
Yes, so, but if you look at the 102, right, and you're saying 102 and 156 round numbers, we're at $260,000 for designing this project, approximately, right?
So,
That's
right,
what we're looking at.
exactly, about 210 to
Yeah,
250, right,
something
exactly.
in that area there.
Right.
Okay, fine and dandy. All right,
So the meeting room and what's the other room?
The-
Computer room?
The 2 meeting rooms, and then the other side of the elevator, which is the computer area, and the
So-
audio visual media room.
That's the lower level, no, that's the first floor.
No, that's the lower
The
level.
lower level where that's the lower level.
yeah,
Right, that's correct. There's a cafe.
So this is the rest of the
bathrooms.
lower level.
Yeah.
Yes, it really encompasses all the public-facing portions of the lower level. We have 2 bathrooms there that could be updated to be ADA compliant. There is the cafe area itself, which is also popular for relaxing or studying, and but just overall, and a kitchenette that we would incorporate. Right now, it faces out into the cafe, and what we would want to do is turn it into facing the meeting room so that we can have cooking-based programs or serve food there when we're having related programs for that.
the one thing I would say from being down there is no question that lower level of the library needs to be renovated and redone. To me, there is no question about that. It's one of my favorite sayings, steady the ship. You guys have done an amazing amount of great work in the library over the last bunch of years and taking it from point A to point B, and that's all credit to you guys and the board for working together in general, the previous boards, for doing all that with you guys. My view at this stage of the game, again, is just to steady the ship, because we have so many other areas in the village. that need investment as well, that we're just trying to balance out kind of where to spend the money wisely, but yet, you know, keep continuing to support, obviously, the library, which is magnificent, but, you know, just trying to figure out that balance, that's all. So,
So are you not in favor of the 164 addition?
right now, I'd be in favor of giving them the 165 and moving the design phase forward. So a year from now, they know exactly what this is going to cost, put it out to bid, and then decide, okay, you know, go from there. That'd be,
I mean, but that's what they asked, that's your original ask.
that would be my view. You know, I wouldn't have a problem doing it. I think that's a good investment. I think it moves the ball forward a year to be able to do this work and design and,
Okay.
you know,
Just
make sure
wasn't
we get
clear.
accurate, and then we can have accurate estimates, because that's the only way you can get accurate estimates, you know. Otherwise, we're at ballparks, and I'm not going to mention the word ballparks.
I've got a quick question here for Mr. Swazi. Mr. Ralph? These mics have to go. They are gone.
Yes,
These
Mayor
mics
West.
are gone. In your experience, $260 million, $260,000 expenditure, as has been very thoroughly outlined here. Is this a lot? In your experience, is it,
So.
what do you think?
I'm not sure it was clear, but I believe the first phase, the schematic phase, is with H2M. And you said that was 64,000
Yes, that's
57 maybe.
64,000.
out of the
that's correct.
102.
Right.
So couldn't the 160 be diminished by 38,000 left over and only ask for 122,000? And that makes 160 for the next phase. In other words, you're gonna have 38 left over.
Yeah, I think that's a possible assessment. However, this is still the possibility that we're cutting it too close because we based it on the ballpark estimate that we were, starting with. So we don't know where the final construction, they bill in percentages as the work progresses. So when they start to do the existing conditions phase, for example, and they determine how much hazardous material is downstairs, or whether or not there's a chase or a plumbing line somewhere that they can't work around, that's when they're going to start to know what the cost could be. And that 156 was based on a ballpark estimate of 3 million. So if this price starts to look like it's 3.3 million, that 156 goes up a bit. So I'm just giving myself a little cushion.
So this 160, this second phase, the 160 we're talking about for the architects to do bid documents, this discussion Mr. Janelle and I had, because at the end of the day, we can't use the schematic and we'd have to go out and get this number anyway. So we're saying if you're going to have somebody do the work, have them do the whole work so that they can go out to bid and we get a solid number, which is what we want here. So I think the 160 is good. And I think that cushion of 38 might, if they don't use it, will mean they'll be going toward that 160. You'll only use like 122 or 130 of it.
Yeah, I'm not interested. Thank you very much, Mr. Swazi. I'm not interested in nickel and diming the allocation, but you're talking about 30 over 156 is 1/3, 1/4. It's 20% cushion. What happens to that money if you don't need it? It stays in your coffers, correct?
What's that?
It's not in our coffers.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, the money doesn't get transferred. It's not like the village contribute, like the transfer to general, like in our operating funds.
Okay.
It's really still a village account. And in the past, when a project isn't moving forward, or if there are funds that are additional, just like recreation funds have been transferred to the library, it's very likely that
Understood.
library funds could be
Understand.
transferred to DPW.
Okay.
But
The other commentary is that the A and E
Thank you.
costs, which is what you're talking about
I'm
here.
sorry.
The A and E costs
Okay, yeah.
are normally 10% of the project costs. So this is pretty much in the same range.
Okay.
it's actually, the estimate is actually based on 8%, but this came directly in an email from the lead architect.
And did we get any other estimates from any other architecture firms, or did we just say we love H2M and we're going with them? Yeah, just in general.
Oh, no, I didn't get any other estimates. They're extremely familiar with our building, and they're strong leaders in the library space. And we're working with
the whole head of the library division is one of the architects that works on our team. So I feel very comfortable with them, and I feel that we're also gaining both efficiency of knowledge and of cost by working with them.
Okay, thank you.
She's one of the leading designers in libraries on the East Coast. We've had superintendents from Island Trees.
Thank you. Please.
Katie Stone is one of the leading designers on the East Coast, and their company's on the state bid. They've designed many libraries on Long Island, over 50 different libraries and universities and schools, including Garden City School System. They designed 4 of them. Well, I was on the school board there as well. And we've had prior library board trustees that have been superintendent at Island Trees. He used them on all of his libraries as well. They've served us very well. And just to add a little bit more reassurance for you, and we appreciate the consideration you're giving us tonight. When the children's plans left from development to come in front of the village board, we came in front of the village board twice because there were changes each time with different boards. One was taking away, one was adding. So you do have that control as we go forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen.
Are there any other questions?
So the first one, I think with the library, let me see. The lower level renovation, 160,000, I think, with the H2M, I suggest some of us, Trustee Torino as the liaison, Vinny, of course, in construction. I'm always interested in the library or whoever, our trustees. I think in the design phase, I think we should take a walk down there because I think even though they are the experts and you get results from the survey, sometimes it's better to work with them in the design phase rather than waiting until they have something and then we're like, okay, it's too high end for us or it's not good enough for us. And then you do a change order or you send them back to do another design, it's another change order, and then you spend more money just revising the design. So I do think in the design phase, we should all take a walk in the library and talk to the firm what we want, what our expectations are, what's practical for us, and what price range we're looking at, just to make it more practical from the get-go and not to wait for the cake to be baked, even in the design. Because after that, you want something different, too much, too little, you send them back, it's more money. So I think
Are
we
you
should.
suggesting that we agree to the expenditure and then with this kind of activity and involvement, you're in favor?
Yes, if we can do that, I think I'm in favor of.
I think
this
Jess brings up
expenditure.
a great point. Jess, basically what you said in a nutshell is value engineering. And it is because, again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, but I am going to bring it up again, is the Edgemere Firehouse. What's gone on for the last 7 or 8 years. And it's not pointing fingers at anybody, but it's value. You have to value engineer as you go through the process. So if you feel like you're going off track budget-wise, okay, pull it back in and say, okay, let's not waste another 6 months designing something that we know is not going to fit in our budget, is not affordable for the village. Stop now, backtrack, redesign at that point, so we're not wasting time, money, and paying architects and engineers more money than we need to pay them, and wasting time and creating a budget that's not realistic. So, Jess, your point is spot on, and especially with interior renovations versus building a new building. There are so many great options to value engineer, and get better value. You might get everything what you want, but you know what? You can really get the project pushed back down in budget and still get an amazing project. And no disrespect to engineers and architects, I work with them every day of the week. At times, they just want to do a magnificent design in architecture. My God, look at how beautiful that looks. Isn't this amazing? Yeah, guys, but you know what? It's 30% more than we want to spend. We could do it this way. It mightn't be exactly like you want it, but it's going to be 30% less, and it's still going to be a fantastic product and a fantastic space. So let's pull things back a little bit. So I think it's a great idea, and I do think we should, get the show on the road. So at least you can plan for the future and then steady the ship.
Is
All right,
there
can
any
it-
way, like, as that's going along and you're designing it, there can be quarterly or periodical reports into the board to show you what phases you're at, what's being discussed to the
Yeah,
board.
I think that's not a problem at all. It
I
definitely.
mean, because otherwise, all of a sudden we come up with something that's just not practical cost-wise.
Sure.
And this way we can kind of nip it in the bud a little bit to
And
kind
I'll
of
be,
say.
Understandable.
I'm there to help. I told Colleen, and, again, I'm sorry for not getting back to Colleen today, actually. I had a crazy day, I know. And believe me, you tried. But I'm there to help and advise and work with these guys and say, hey, you know what? That is a good idea, or this is a better way to do it, and this is more cost effective. You know what? It is good to have somebody who represents the village beyond Giuseppe and John, who has experience and is respected in that world, to try and get the best value for the dollar we can. And you
Mr.
guys
Muldoon.
get a great job.
Can we take a vote, my friend?
Sure we can.
Are you all squared?
Wanna chat? Come on.
So my belief is that there are three. We voted on the maintainer, correct? We voted on the maintainer. So, Ms. Wu, we have to vote on the two capital items, correct?
Correct.
Wait, I have one more question.
Oh,
though.
sure, okay.
I'm so sorry, but is there any appetite amongst the board to increase the programming dollars? I know you asked for some increase, but I will say that slide that you shared with us about where we stand relative to other communities and our spend on programming was eye-opening. And I think did you ask for 20,000 more for this year?
Yes, a $20,000 increase, which would bring us to 43,000.
Right. Comparatively speaking, we're still what,
Yeah, that's
18th
an,
or something, or?
yeah.
Yeah. So I'd throw it out there before we finalize everything. You didn't ask for more, so I'm sure you wouldn't turn it down.
No,
But it just really struck me that
no.
even with that, we are really,
What I really think.
I don't know if you have the capacity to handle more, so.
So, well, I definitely think that what really seems to be getting the most raves from our residents are the bigger programs, having musical performers. The dancers that we featured on this slide, they were called the Red Hot Mamas. They had a packed house that day. When we can have a all-day theme event like our Star Wars Day, things like that, that really, we do have to put in the extra dollars to either get materials or programmers to make those programs special, but we could do them more often instead of maybe 3 or 4 times a year. We're going to start looking into bringing authors in. And again, that's a dollar value thing. If you want to, we can bring in local authors that some people have heard of, or we can go out there and try to get a bestseller author, that people will really know and really entice people to think there's a lot of value here. So I absolutely would not say no to more. Thank you.
I don't know if there's any appetite.
Okay, there must be 20 somewhere, but let's just table that for a couple minutes and we'll go through what we have to go through and vote, and then we'll consider that very quickly thereafter. So with regard to the program for the ceiling and the lights, I'm going to make a motion to table that until 26-27. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Except for, I'm abstaining.
Okay.
The only commentary.
I'd go for it.
Yes.
Still need
I'm
to
sorry.
get the bids in so that we have some idea of what it is going to cost, and that has not come down yet.
Okay. Well, we will, the folks at the library seem to be extraordinarily talented, and I would suspect that they'll be back at the appropriate time. Issue number 2 is the expenditure, the capital expenditure for the ground level, lower level capital project. I would move that we postpone that until 26-27. Do I have a motion?
Wait, were we talking about
We're talking about the $3 million, three plus
It's
million.
already in.
that's already next year's.
Oh, it is? It's not
this
in this
year.
year's?
Only the design is this year.
It's the 165.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I got a
that's
little
it.
bit ahead of myself. Thank you very much. Then, no, I just didn't believe that it should be in this upcoming year's budget. And I'm sorry, I was mistaken. Then with regard to the 160,000, is it 65?
60.
160. I thought it was 160 expenditure for a consultant and an architectural design expert, H2M. Do I have, and I am moving to adopt that. Do I have a second?
Just to leave it, to not change it. You're not voting.
Yeah,
on
leave it.
budget, so
You're right.
You don't even need a vote.
Leave it? Okay, we'll leave it. Beautiful.
So just.
All right, then that leaves us with the 20,000 extra allocation that Ms. Courtney has suggested. Any discussion, anywhere we can get that money? What do we think, Irene?
I'm in agreement that you have to prime the pump.
Yeah,
If you don't have the programs, you're not going to get the traffic.
exactly right. I mean, I'm not voting on this, but I think it's a no-brainer.
Could
I
you-
just have a question. You're asking for an additional 20,000 because they already increased the budget 20,000. So this is to increase it by 40. By 40,000.
No, I'm sorry.
So that's,
Is it already part of the budget? I didn't think so. This is an ad.
where's that at?
Was to add to that 20.
You make it 40.
Oh, okay.
Was that the libraries ask or?
The first,
No, it
No,
wasn't.
no, no, no. They
It
already
wasn't,
asked, it's
right?
in the
It was
budget
20.
already. So the 20,000 additional is already in the budget.
okay.
Yeah.
So
but-
you're asking for another 20,000 to make it a total of 40,000 increase. Okay, so that's
But-
an additional 20. that
But
she's
that's your ask, right? That's not the library's ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Okay.
I was confused. Save everything for this.
Ed, you want to make that motion? Or just-
I'm like, where did this come from?
Yes, 10. I like 10. Sure.
Can I just say, make a
Okay,
comment
just-
before the motion?
Sure.
I mean, I support the library. I think I think we had a new children's librarian. I think more programs can be done by the children's librarian. And then the other 20 can be for vendors or providers from the outside. I think that would be a good balance. That's my comment.
Yeah, you definitely want it for the children's library. I think it's important that they have as many programs as they can.
So-
I'll let you all go the way, but I would say, just in the future, it's always good to give people a heads up before a meeting on a money decision or any decision, because I think it puts people in a tough spot,
Yep.
on the spot, like they hadn't heard about it till then, so.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mayor, but I think I will move that we add $10,000 to the programming budget as previously described. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry, do I have a second? I have a motion. This is general programming. General programming, is that fair? Is that fair? Ms. Marianne, thank you.
What's that? Sorry?
So
Yes,
We're
yes,
told
it-
correct.
it's
10,000
general.
To apply to programs in general, correct.
Okay. So,
Eight- I don't know any of the authors like specific prices because it's never been, something we could strive for. However, I would say that some of your top list people will be in the 5-figure range. Like Adriana Trigiani is very popular and does a lot of library book discussions and things like that. I think she's maybe in the 10,000 range. But there are plenty of other authors that are notable that are maybe not your number one bestsellers, but people that have, garnered some notoriety. There's a lot of local authors on Long Island that are well-known, and we definitely could find some achievable authors that are, more in the 4-figure range, but I would really have to do the research.
okay. So my motion stands to add $10,000 to the general fund for programming. Do I have a second? Thank you. All in favor? All opposed?
I want to make it 20.
Right, so we are 4-2. 4-2. 4-2 carries it, positive. And now I think we're finished with I know. Yeah, I think we'll be okay. And are there any, I think we've covered the departments. Any comments from residents? Robert?
Thank you very much, trustees.
Yeah, good evening. Robert Hers,
Thank you.
111 Cherry Valley Avenue.
Robert.
All right, I'll just talk louder, or is he going to?
If anyone's on Zoom, they won't hear you, though. That's
Oh,
one of the
okay, fine.
reasons for the microphones.
Mic on?
It's working. Yep, it's working.
Okay, good evening. Robert Hers, 111 Cherry Valley Avenue. These are my comments which summarize many of the points that I've commented on at the 3 prior budget meetings. Now, first, once the bonds are issued for the new fiscal year, the village's debt burden will have grown by 80% in under 3 years, which is really incredible. And this excludes debt associated with the enterprise funds. This debt growth of $20 million is unsustainable and is being driven by the need to pay for capital projects. Beyond the new fiscal year, I estimate that debt will continue to grow as expenditures are made for capital projects. Based on my estimates for maintenance capital spending, the village's outstanding debt will continue to increase by $7 million a year beyond fiscal 26. So our budget is around $70 million. So this is 10% of the budget that we're basically adding to with debt. This shortfall amounts to 13% of our tax revenue. So the village's debt blowout will continue. My estimates for the village's debt trajectory are low, as they assume that the village's infrastructure has been properly maintained over time. However, we all know that that's not the case. Although with the expected hiring of Project Manager 2, the Board of Trustees will gain some sense of the magnitude of deferred maintenance that we will need to address, in addition to the numbers that I've come up with. Consequently, it's imperative for the Board of Trustees to prioritize the village's capital projects by focusing on critical infrastructure like sewers, roads, and structures, while delaying cosmetic and less urgent projects. And I'm encouraged by some of the stuff that came up at today's meeting, because some of the library projects I think can be deferred, and it looks like they're being pushed out. So I'm pleased with that. Although a balanced budget has been presented for fiscal 26, it has been propped up by unsustainable items, including an appropriation of the current year surplus, an appropriation of unassigned fund balance, which is basically like using money that you've saved up to pay for your current heating bill, if you're trying to compare it to a household. And also the utilization of excess insurance reserves, which were built up in prior years. However, these excess reserves will be exhausted in a few years. In total, these items amount to $4.7 million. That's 7% of the village's expenditures. And if it were funded with taxes would need to increase by over 8%. And as a point of reference, the tax levy for fiscal 2006 is only increasing by 2.5%. Based on the items I've reviewed, the village's financial situation is not sustainable, and it will need to be addressed by a combination of tax increases and spending cuts. In reflecting on the budget presentations, I believe it would have been useful to discuss the full cost of new positions that have been talked about, including large steps after year 1, as was revealed during a question and answer session about the maintenance workers. And it was a $9,000 increase after their first year, which is basically a 20% jump. Moreover, the full cost of positions should include an estimate for healthcare costs and retirement, which are not included in the village's fund accounting financial statements. However, they're included in the statements that are done on an accrual basis. For example, I estimate that the cost of this benefit during the first year of an employee on the village's payroll exceeds $37,000. And it grows each year for the first 15 years that the employee works for the village, because that's the vesting period. My estimate excludes any actuarial adjustments. I don't have the records that would allow me to come up with some assumptions about that. Consequently, the $80,000 cost, which was brought up during the discussion of the library for the maintainer, if you add healthcare and retirement to that, it comes to $117,000 per year. Clearly, we can do better with a private contractor. In discharging the fiduciary responsibilities, or it should be in discharging its fiduciary responsibilities, the Board of Trustees needs to consider the full cost of unionized village employees versus the lower cost of third-party contractors. However, in thinking about this balance, they also need to consider non-monetary issues, such as reliability, competence, and other factors, as the village employees currently perform many activities that are often outsourced by other villages. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other comments in the room? Any comments on Zoom? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, folks.